How'd you
I
find
found it.
Where was it? You're on mute. I can't hear you. Now you're frozen. Now I can't hear you.
So can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. When you click on participants and then you look at you see your list of participants, and then each person has their tiny little video camera. If you click on their little video camera, then you can allow them to record.
Oh yeah, I figured it was something like that.
Yeah, dude. That's how it is. All right. Well, I've allowed you, and now I'm going back to my treadmill. Now I know forever, because I never knew what that was. It's weird because you can ask somebody to let you record like in a meeting, and they don't get any notification at all.
What do you mean?
Well, when you try to record like a class or something, it says you have to get permission from the host, and you expect that the host would get some sort of notification, like your participant wants to record, you know?
Oh, okay.
But I think the only way to ask is to actually just say it, you know, verbally.
Yeah, that is weird. Something I didn't think of.
They made us have to talk to each other.
So I guess there's kind of a lot going on in the country right now. I guess people are not taking the Brianna. What would you call that? They're not taking the outcome very well. It's
Yeah,
like
dude.
this more protests.
You know, even in Buffalo last night, there was protesters hit a car. Somebody intentionally hit.
Yeah, you know, that's been happening. That's been happening a lot.
Yeah.
It seems like.
I think that seems to be, it's like it's being encouraged, like some sort of
yeah, they should have really
resistance.
cracked down. They should have really cracked down on that the moment it happened. It's been happening more and more. The cops do it too, so.
I don't know if I'm being paranoid, but I don't think Matt Brown wants to be my friend because I can't find his name anywhere.
I think it's like that. I think you're spelling it wrong.
Did you see the name? Did you see the name?
Matthew S. whatever something Brown.
I don't know, whatever I took a picture of. You don't see it?
Yep, that one.
I can't see it, but yeah, it's whatever I took a picture of.
Okay.
Yeah, maybe.
I have a feeling that he's just private or something, and it has nothing to do with you specifically. How could he not love you and want to be your Facebook friend?
I don't know, maybe an introduction needs to be made, or a realization that things aren't the way they used to be.
Yeah, I mean, they used to fight a lot, but I never thought of them as not friends. But maybe I just was misreading the situation.
Sorry, I had to leave that. Yeah, I always make it about myself. I always assume the worst. I'm like, did he like say looked up my name and said blocked so I can never find it?
Nah, I doubt he did that.
Yeah, I don't know if you can do that.
You can.
Craig did that to me. You can laugh.
I've blocked a few people. Not a lot, but a few.
Does Craig still have the same number he had before?
I got blocked years ago. I have no idea. That was even before Facebook when I got blocked, I think.
I actually tried to call him today, but he just went to busy.
Married to like a really beautiful, gorgeous woman, and they own like a restaurant or something somewhere upstate.
Nafisa, stop internet stalking him.
I'm not. I'm not.
They own a restaurant where?
Upstate New York.
You know where? Upstate?
I don't know. Let me look. I can
Like
look.
like Westchester?
I'm gonna look right now. It's called Golden Rustic Cafe.
Oh,
Yep, it's somewhere. Where is it? I don't know. Oh, I think Rhinebeck, New York.
oh, okay.
Yeah. Look at how cute they look together.
Stop it, Nafisa.
Okay, fine.
What are you doing to yourself?
I'm over it. I'm good. I'm good. Oh, did you see Andy's kid too? I stalk Andy on Instagram too. I'm gonna call him right
Why
now.
are you stalking Andy? Why doesn't he just join us so you can talk to him for real?
No, I can bug Andy, I think, anytime. I just saw his kid. She was wearing Breonna Taylor's gown. I mean, cape on Instagram.
Oh yeah, I got on him for indoctrinating his kids.
What do you mean?
Indoctrinating the kids.
You told him to, or you told him to stop?
I didn't tell him to stop. I just said, indoctrinating the kids I see.
Good job. I'm proud of him.
All right. Yeah, that's good parenting. Would you expect anything less from Andy?
Maybe.
No?
I haven't. The last time I talked to him, I think, was when I saw me and Rom saw you guys up in New York. God, I don't know. I still lived in Philly, and you guys were doing like an open mic or something in Brooklyn, and we drove up and hung out with you guys. So that would probably be at least 10 years ago. So anyway, we're talking about the state of the world, huh?
Yes.
Waiting on Ish, though.
Yeah,
Did he leave the meeting?
Oh, is this being recorded right now?
Yeah.
Yes.
You gotta take the other parts about Craig and other people out, please. And me talking about Matt Brown blocking me.
Nope. You knew we were recording.
Only you guys can see how real I am. Nobody else.
This is the real world.
No.
There's no editing.
So
in the real
it
world.
looks like Ish left anyway. I don't know where he went.
Aww.
Yeah, don't worry about
So
it.
yeah, I feel like
So they say
it's
Trump might try to people are afraid he might try to stay in the White House.
yeah, it's funny because I think that everybody joked about that 4 years ago when he was elected, but I think all of us that were joking about it kind of felt like it was probably true.
Yeah.
You know?
He's getting ready for something big. I feel like he's building up something, and then later on, when it is time, he'll just throw it on everybody. He's like, I've been complaining about it. You guys shouldn't be surprised.
Well,
Yeah.
They've been asking him, and he won't say that he'll give up the White House. So.
Or he could just be fucking with us, you know?
Well, yeah. Yeah, no one knows.
To distract.
I think the thing is, holding that seat in the White House is the only thing that's keeping him out of jail for all of the shit that he did prior to being president. So he will destroy democracy to avoid a jail sentence. Like, he's willing to do that.
Yeah, are you sure that's the only thing keeping him out of jail? I mean, most presidents just get pardoned.
It's interesting though, because I don't think it's something I was saying to Mike and another friend of mine earlier. I don't think, a judge, Republican or Democrat, or I don't think a judge is going to destroy democracy for Donald Trump. I think if it comes down to being on the right side of history, I don't think that a Supreme Court judge at the very least is willing to rule on behalf of Donald, even a judge he put there.
I agree with you 100%. And also the reason he's getting away with all this stuff is because our system was built broken, and half of the things he's doing are legal. So I would agree with you 100%. But if he did cross the line, I do believe that I don't know, but also I don't believe that either because look at how these cops are getting away with all this stuff. But that's because it's written in the law. So you're right. Yeah.
They've been protected forever.
Yeah.
I think a lot of these judges, you know, I was saying earlier, we kind of see the precedents and cases throughout history where if it comes to really preserving something democratic, you'll see a conservative judge vote, you know, against, you know, what his party wants. You know what I mean? And I think this really comes down to being on the right side of history versus destroying, because what are the real implications if a judge upholds him keeping the White House illegally, right? Like you create a situation where ultimately, or at least potentially, you know, the liberals are going to want to fight. We as liberals are going to want to fight, or, you know, come the next election, you know, when a liberal president gets in office, do we have a precedent that's already set for the same, you know, situation or scenario? And I also think something to be considered, and I don't know if this is actually the case or not. I've talked about it before, but could Donald Trump just pardon himself?
He's asked that
You know,
question.
You know, and it's a new precedent, right? Like, could he not just give himself a presidential pardon for crimes that, you know, he may be being accused of?
Yeah, I don't know if you're allowed to do that.
I don't either. I just don't know.
It feels like there's a lot of things that we're noticing now that we weren't aware of before because we just trusted that people would respect the office in terms of like who was holding the office, whether they're terrible human beings or not. Like, come on, Bush was not a good guy, but like he knew when it was time to go.
Well, people, I mean, Ish was saying people were afraid that Bush wasn't going to go either.
Yeah, there was a fear. He
Really?
he didn't use the dialogue though. That the difference between Bush and Trump is Bush didn't drop any subtle clues or any hints or anything. There was just this fear that he wasn't going to leave based upon what happened, leading to him getting the, you know, his second term.
Right.
So there was this fear that, you know, is this guy gonna leave office? He's, you know, we kind of thought he stole the Oval Office the second time around. Is he gonna leave office when the time comes? The difference being he just didn't drop these little subtle, you know, clues and hints.
I think not just that he stole the office, but his use of executive, you know, orders up until that point was pretty unprecedented.
Who knew that we'd have a president that made him look like a good guy?
Yeah,
well, we should have seen. That we should have seen coming. We should have seen that.
Well, I mean, Bush killed a lot of people.
Yeah.
He was a monster, but comparatively, you kind of miss him if you had to choose between what we have now and Bush, you know?
I don't. I really don't.
No, I mean, he was the worst. He was terrible. He was a terrible monster, but Trump makes him look good, you know?
Well, I think on the surface, but certainly not when you look at the scale of what
Bush killed a lot. Bush killed a lot of people.
He did kill a lot of people.
They both.
I get the sentiment for sure.
They definitely put a lot of people, both of them, in danger, which come from my culture and practice my religion and everything else. So like they're both equal to me. Like they definitely don't feel safe them being around. I feel like they just encourage psychopaths to act on how to treat Muslim people or Black people. You know what I mean?
See, that's a good point.
So
I can imagine, you know, as you know, I often say, and I've said this, and it's how I feel, but I can imagine it's not empathetic, and that's one of the things I've said recently, that I one of the reasons why it's imperative for me to vote for Biden is because I feel it helps people that don't necessarily look like me. You know what I mean? And so, you know, at my allies, you understand what I'm saying? And I say that because I felt, you know, when Trump got into office, for me, just as a Black man in America, I didn't feel like, mind you, I don't support Trump. I just didn't feel like it got worse for me. Mind you, I'm not on the fringe. You know what I'm saying? I'm not in like the lower class, so to speak. So I kind of was oblivious to the fact that, well, there are a lot of people that are really impacted by Trump's rhetoric and the people who are moved to action because of his rhetoric.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I came to the conclusion, because I'm not a fan of Biden, but I realized it's important for me to vote for Biden because there are people from other minority groups or marginalized groups, I'll say, that are certainly impacted. And it's important for me to vote because they're impacted by him being in office.
Mm-hmm.
So I gotta vote him out.
Yeah.
Now, I had this conversation with someone on the phone who was one of the folks I was reaching out to. Mind you, the point of these phone calls isn't to tell people to vote for Biden or whatever, but it's part of the imperative eventually. But for now, we're just trying to get people to vote by mail, so they don't have to worry about the long lines and closed polling places and all that. And I had a brother on the phone give me the whole I'm not voting, and all the standard reasons that you just mentioned, that it's not any worse now and blah blah blah. And I asked him if he had any Haitian friends, and he said yes. And so I just started talking about everything that we were just talking about, and how those folks have a very good chance of being forced to go back, to their nation of origin. And a lot of immigrants, Jews, including refugees who could die, like going home. And so eventually I got to the point where, I said, so you say you voting isn't going to do anything, but what about your Haitian friends who, you may never see again? And he said, that's not fair. And I was like, really? But we got to a point where he at least respected what our organization does as far as like building power from the ground up and being a third party. So I sent him some information, but it is about making people think, because a lot of Black folks get into that mindset like, it's always like this for us. It doesn't change, blah, blah, blah. So I try to make people think about their friends, think about people close to them that are going to be affected.
Thank you guys. That means a lot. And sometimes I feel like the African American people don't get the love and credit that they do deserve from refugees, or immigrants, new immigrants to America. So like, thank you for thinking of us, but it does affect us like a lot with the tribal band, with being in fear, the way he keeps bringing up Ilhan Omar, even though I don't like her, and these Somalis and these refugees, like, we are afraid, Yeah. So scary out there.
Yeah, and that's the thing is like, we got to band together. This is the other thing I brought up to him is like, Malcolm X was trying to get folks to think globally. What I said to this brother was like, Black people are being mistreated all over the world. It's not just America. So like, we got to think about our brothers and sisters that are going to be affected all over the world and that are going to, be going back to dangerous situations. We just can't be thinking about ourselves. We got to like band together, and like, Ghana and like nations in Africa are still being colonialized now by like new nations, right? I mean, the same thing is still happening years later. So we got to like think globally and like band together.
I think the more that you can get people to think about the bigger picture, and not only that, to have a patient conversation with someone. I think what you did and what you're doing when you're calling people is super important, because I think when we're on social media, there's nothing that you can do on social media to persuade a person. But if you can have a real conversation where you ask questions and you tell them where you're coming from, that's effective, And
at the end of the day, like, I didn't really have an expectation for that conversation, which I think was good, because when you have an expectation, your ego can get involved and you want to win and you want to score points and all that. I just wanted to see what he would say and to see where the conversation would go. And I think I left it at a real place. he wasn't like, oh yeah, you told me I'm going to go vote now. But he certainly talked for a while, and he certainly seemed open to the idea, and he certainly thought about what I said about his Haitian friends, and like the fact that we kept talking after he said that wasn't fair, what I said about, you know, not seeing his Haitian friends next year due to what's happening, like that was, I think that was a real moment. I think by him saying that's not fair really means like you kind of hit me in my heart a little bit, you know, which was good. But it wasn't like I was like, okay, let's see if I can push him over to my side. I just wanted to see where the conversation would go. You know,
Yeah.
hopefully the information I gave him, he was able to look, you know, into it and find something meaningful.
A lot of times it's just about, you know, giving people other things to think about.
Yeah, you plant a seed. That's all you can really do.
I mean, the positive is that, like, if you spoke to him for more than 5 minutes, then, you know, that's a big deal, because, like, you know, the highest form of currency is time. You know, if I'm willing to invest my time, I mean, it's got to be worthwhile, right?
Yep, definitely. Yeah, most definitely. And then the other thing too is, you know how it is, if you try to push someone too hard, that's just going to backfire too. So that's the last thing you want to do, right? I don't want to be Mr. Salesman, like saying, okay, good. So did I convince you? You're going to go vote now? Like that would have killed any progress we made.
Right.
It's like let people come to their own conclusions.
So do you find this a lot when talking to Black people particularly?
About not voting in this election? No, I wouldn't say a lot. I would say there's been a few. And to be honest, I don't really always know what to say. Like, I don't really have, like, our mission is to get people to vote by mail. So I don't feel like there's this imperative for me to encourage people to do whatever they don't want to do. And I understand why people feel like, you know, maybe they don't want to vote. So my idea isn't to try to like go around convincing people. We just happen to have a good conversation, and I just like thought about, you know, refugees and what it was like. Because I think a lot of times, you know, I think Black people don't always think about the refugee situation affecting us personally. It's just like a other. But like the moment I realized Haitians were one of the big folks affected, I was like, okay, that's you know, Haitians are Black. A lot of people might have some Haitian friends. Like, let's talk about that and see where that conversation goes. But there's only been a few. There's only been a few folks that said that. What I really get is people not trusting the mail and wanting to vote in person. And I think the people who don't trust the mail is really they don't trust Donald Trump because they think he's going to try to do something. So with those folks, I just say, look, according to the Pennsylvania Board of Elections, many polling places will be closed like they were on primary day. That being the case, we strongly recommend that you apply for an absentee ballot. That way you have it just in case your polling place is closed. And then sometimes they tell them, listen, even if your polling place is open, with all the other ones that are closed, that could be, yours is going to be super crowded, right? You might be waiting hours in line and, you know, have people coughing on you and all that stuff. So just take this just in case. That way you can make your own decision when it comes down to it. And a lot of people respect that. And a lot of
It's
people,
funny.
you know,
I just saw earlier today an article. It was kind of like one of those, you know, how like you get a phone call or an email, you know, to vote for a specific candidate or what have you, or you see a commercial. It was Donald Trump encouraging people to make sure that they are prepared for mail-in votes. And I think it's interesting because, you know, from what I understood, like he's against this whole process of mail-in votes. But it just kind of,
He's saying
it just
something
kind
else to his supporters.
well, yeah, because obviously he wants,
He
he
wants it to
definitely
work in his
wants people to
favor.
vote, right?
Yeah, he
So,
wants it in
but,
his favor, yeah.
He's
but
an
I just want,
idiot because I heard him say, like, excuse me for a second, but like he was talking about how like, oh, this like mailing your ballot thing is like bullshit and it's this whole, it's like a scam and all this and whatever other words that he uses. Then in the same sentence, he goes, oh, but I believe in, what is it called, absentee ballot. But they work the same. Like, I swear I wish I had that video. This man is insane. Like, I'm
He's
so
just trying
embarrassed
to
for America.
lay the groundwork for him to have something to say that the election was not valid. And if he
But
can
he said it
say
in
it's
the
because
same
of,
video.
he's not the brightest.
Oh my God, America.
well, I
He's
do
either not
think,
the brightest, or he's stupid, or he's very smart and he's tricking us all.
I think he's
Sorry,
smarter
Yoshi.
than people give him credit for, but I don't think he's the brightest president at all. But I definitely think he's smarter than people give him credit for. And I only say that because I think that you have to have some sort of, and Mike has certainly corrected me in the past on this, and he had a very, 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 very an awesome argument, which is correct. Like he is by no means, you know, he's no Rhodes Scholar. He certainly isn't, you know, Barack Obama. He certainly isn't one of these people that, you know, are some of the presidents that we've had in the past that, you know, you can tell right away, like these people are, you know, smart
I don't
people.
think
You
that
know what I
matters
mean?
to like people though. Like he's just a liar and he knows like what to say. I don't care if somebody's smart, as long as you're like kind and you lead in it. Like anybody can lead people, you know?
Yeah, well, I do agree there. I don't think
Yeah.
that a leader, the criteria for a leader has to be like genius
I don't think
at
that's the
all.
criteria. I think that's fucked
Yeah.
up.
Yeah, I don't think it has to be either. It, you
Mhm.
know, there are a lot of other skill sets. But one thing I did want to say, I think there is some validity, and this is just from my personal experience. I think there is some validity in the idea that the mail process, and I don't know if they're doing it on purpose, but that this process, this mail thing, could be bad. I don't know if it's as extreme as what's being put out, but I literally just went through a situation, Mike. You know,
Yeah.
like. I waited for, you know, a very important package for 2 weeks. It literally I got it the day before yesterday.
Yeah.
And it sat in Jamaica, New York since September 8th.
Yeah.
Wow.
It just sat at the post office in Jamaica. It was just literally, I'm tracking this package and it tells me that it left Jamaica, New York, September 9th at 12:09 a.m.
Well, you know,
So
September 8th was my birthday, so they might have been
yeah.
partying. They might have been partying out there in Jamaica.
I like that.
6 days later, I called the post office and I'm like, listen, where's my package? And nobody knows. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. I'm looking, because they're like, we're going to investigate. But I'm like, I'm looking at your tracking and it says it departed Jamaica, New York. I live in Buffalo. It departed Jamaica, New York 6 days ago. Where is it? Is it just like floating in the air somewhere? Is it like on the back of a truck? Like it was registered mail as well. So it has to be signed for every time it changes hands. And I'm like, where is I got it the day before yesterday.
That's
So, I
happened to
mean,
me several times during this quarantine with mail just disappearing.
well, you know, that, you know, begs the question, you know, if you have, I hear the same thing happens with mail that goes through Chicago as well. Like people are having problems if it like, you know, I got mail from other places. I got packages from other places. This one came from Florida. It went to Jamaica and it just sat in Jamaica. But I got packages from California within the same time period, within a few days. It just didn't go to Jamaica, to the post office in Jamaica. So I just wonder, I don't know if the post office is trying to prove a point, you know what I mean? Because funding is getting cut or what have you, or, you know, but I think that could be a problem. I think there will be choke points.
Right.
I don't
You know
put
what I
past,
mean?
you know how he always talks about like, oh, mailing whatever's not going to work or sending in your vote. It always scares me that he has a plan where he knows he's going to win with the mail-in stuff. So when he does win, he'll be like, "Oh, I was against it, but I'm glad I won." Like, I don't pass anything when it comes to him. Like, I'm super paranoid.
Well, everything
There
he's saying is
is-
contradictory, right? This whole coup thing
Right.
that he's talking about is specifically because of the popular vote, which he certainly didn't win on.
Right.
But what if he already has like fake, what is it called, ballots for him already made, and then he's gonna send it in and then say, "Hey, I won, but I was against mailing whatever it's called, mailing ballots." You know what I mean? I know I sound crazy. but
Well,
I think he has a
everything
plan.
that used to be crazy could be considered normal now with
Mhm.
this election cycle.
I'm like, he's
I
up to
feel
Truth
a
is
no
little bit
always
good.
like
stranger than fiction.
Yeah, well, a little bit with the mail-in ballots. In the back of my mind, I'm not positive it's going to work out well. And it's the same with census participation. So our organization is heavily encouraging census participation, especially in the neighborhoods that we serve, low income, predominantly Hispanic neighborhoods. But in the back of my mind, I have this fear that we're encouraging all these people to participate in the census, and somehow, some way, Trump's going to shadily use that info against them.
Right.
And then I'm at fault for encouraging them to participate. You know what I mean?
That's
Crazy
interesting.
times we live in that we're all scared.
Mm-hmm.
Well, ICE
That's
has certainly
interesting.
been way more active since Bush came into office. Was that Dr.
Say again?
ICE has been way more active since Trump came into office.
So I got a question.
Netflix.
Where did all the, and I'm in ghost mode, so you can't see my finger quotes, so I'm gonna tell you I'm making finger quotes. Where did all the terrorists go?
I guess we
Well,
won.
Oh. Obama killed bin Laden, so there's one.
I mean, that was like the conservative thing, right?
Cut off the head of the snake.
That was like their thing, right? Their scare tactic to kind of, we're not taking in refugees because they're terrorists, and we're not That was like their thing.
Well, we got other. I mean, we have so many points of fear now that's just one of them.
I think they've redirected the focus towards Antifa, which isn't even really an organization, but is instead an ideology.
Oh, and BLM, man. I know people who go. I mean, the right. There are people who are really going against BLM, and if you didn't have an in or know some of these folks, you'd be surprised. I mean, there are people.
Because they're trying to demonize Black people. They want every single thing that has to do with Black people to be like some kind of terrorist organization so bad.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even the FBI director a couple of weeks ago was like, Antifa is just a theory, and Black Lives Matter has not caused any harm to anybody in this country. The real threat is, he said, these white supremacists and these white men who are killing people and causing terror and shooting people up in America. So like, it's all bullshit. But I know there is terrorists in my country, and Al-Shabaab is fucking bombing everybody left and right down there.
Well, it's interesting that you mention that, and you say, they want everything to do with Black people to be terrorists, because that dates all the way back to slavery.
Mm-hmm.
Like every.
Can you still hear him? I can't.
There's a meme going around with Martin Luther King's opinion on supremacy, racial supremacy, and they're using his words to denounce Black Lives Matter. And I read these memes and they bother me because it's like, wait a minute, Black Lives Matter isn't a supremacy movement at all.
I think you have to remember that for public school systems, they took the actions of Dr. King and they modified them in a way that made it look like he was well behaved and passive enough to be palatable to white people, even though we forget that when he was active, first of all, they fucking killed him, and also he was not well liked outside of the community of activism that he worked in. White people feared and disliked him.
Many
Not
Black
all.
people didn't support him.
Right. And then we historically were like, why can't these guys behave more like Dr. King? He was so well behaved, basically, is what they're saying.
That we killed him.
He behaved himself,
That-
you know?
And that's the fucked
we
up
had to
part
kill
about
him.
America. It's like they want black people to behave themselves and act a certain way, but they were not the ones who like enslaved people, abused people, raped people, and do all these things. And then they have the audacity to fucking come at African American people like they're fucking demons.
But have you ever seen the average white person when they get stopped by the cops compared to black people when they get stopped by the cops?
Oh my God, they get so
White
uppity
people
like
do
me.
not-
I'm like, why the fuck are you stopping me? I'm
they
fucking
do
Somalian,
not.
bitch.
Yeah, they do not act well behaved when they get stopped. Like that whole, like I think
I've
that
never
might have been
seen
the
a white
funniest.
person not resist arrest.
That might have been the funniest Dave Chappelle skit ever, was when he was like, "This is what it's like to be a black person with your white friend when they get stopped by the cops," and just like how your jaw drops to A, see them get away with talking like that, and B, just to like see how angry they are, you know, for getting stopped, and like, you know, it's just like, it's incredible. So for all the talk of, oh, if you just didn't resist, and oh, if you were just well behaved, it's like, you can't be serious.
Mm-hmm. They touch on a little bit on in another way that's pretty funny. Not as funny as Chappelle, of course, but that new show Woke that's on Hulu.
Oh, okay. I've heard of
Have
it.
you watched any of it yet?
I haven't seen it yet. No.
The main character, you watched some of it?
I watched all of it.
Yeah, it's good. I can't wait for the next season. But the main character, he has a white friend. His white friend is selling cocaine, but it's like energy drinks, but it's cocaine. And his white friend has this like bag full of cocaine, and he gets tackled by the cops for matching a description. Meanwhile, his white friend is getting in the cop's face like, "Don't do that to him." Meanwhile, he's got like a boatload of cocaine, and the cop never touches him.
Right.
You know, just like, and they're just trying to subtly like show, you know, if you're paying attention to.
That's why I always tell my friends, like, anytime they're arguing with white people on Facebook, I'm like, I know this is gonna sound crazy, but like, I'm like, don't explain yourselves. You don't owe them any explanation. They know what Black Lives Matter stands for. They know what African American people want in this world and in America. But these motherfuckers are so fucking delusional and crazy that they want you guys to defend yourselves. And while they should be defending you guys. Does that make sense, guys? Like, I just get, it's so fucked
I think
up.
that some of them don't know, though. That's the thing. That's
No, I don't believe that. No. I'm not gonna fall for that shit. No.
Because I think that they're falling for those media sources that are fucking pushing this narrative that Black people are trying to take over, and because they're scared and they don't want to lose their position anyway, they like being white and being in power. I think on an unconscious level, they know what's going on, but maybe on their most conscious present level, not all white people, of course, a lot of white people know exactly what's going on, but the less intelligent ones are just scared that they're losing something, and they're allowing those news sources to just convince them that like defund the police is a bad thing, Black Lives Matter is against them, you know?
Yeah, it's not very hard to convince them, you know.
Yeah, I mean, they're ready. They're ready.
Yeah.
They're waiting for someone to tell them what they are hoping to hear anyway.
Yeah.
I agree with you guys on a lot of things, but I'm just not gonna, because if I can try to understand where a fucking KKK person is coming from, I think they can understand.
Oh, I agree with
Black
you 100%
Lives Matter.
on that.
It's another way of like, and I sound like I'm trying to like say that I don't hate white people, because I love white people, but some of them
say you hate white people.
They're just horrible human beings that do not want to understand Black people. They want everybody else to explain themselves to them and to keep demonizing African American people. And I'm tired of it.
Well, I would agree with you, Nafisa, that if you run into people like that, there is no reason to A, waste your breath, B, let a white person explain to them what the deal is, because they're more likely to A, listen, and B, like, you don't need to waste your energy on that.
Yeah. No, this is my white friends explaining it to them. like, and they still find a way to like be uppity about it and try to like, you know?
Yeah, well, no, but what I'm saying is either way, like, you shouldn't waste your energy on that. And yeah, I mean, your white friends hopefully will get a better gauge on who they can actually push to listen, because it's like we're all former canvassers here, and we know the type of people who we can push to our side based on them being on the fence or open-minded, right? So no one should ever waste their time on someone who's a hardcore idiot or racist or just like doesn't understand what's going on. We should be spending time with people who are open-minded, right? So I don't know, hopefully your friends get that and they're not wasting too much of their time on people who are never going to listen.
Yeah, I agree with you. Good point. You're right.
I think the important thing is that we're able to bring those people that are on the fence over to our side before the conservative white people who are afraid of defunding the police and are afraid of Black Lives Matter bring them over to their side.
Right. Yeah.
And Nafisa, I don't want you to think I don't agree with you, because I do agree with you 99% of the time, but I do think that periodically there are people that just are too dumb to understand.
Okay, I'll listen to that, even though I don't believe it in my heart, but I will.
I hope I'm like, I part of me thinks that I'm wrong, but
Well, no, there are definitely
that.
people. There are definitely people that are too dumb to understand, but then there are definitely people who don't want to understand. I mean, both things can be true. Because remember,
Well, you
there's
got
like,
you got people that look for confirmation bias, that choose cognitive dissonance. You got, you know, people who are oblivious and have the luxury to be oblivious. Like there's so many categories of too dumb to understand. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Right.
it's like 50 Shades of Racist.
Yeah.
Right. Just because you don't understand doesn't make you any less racist.
Right.
It doesn't make you right for thinking that way, of course. But I just want to believe that there's some people out there that there's something going on in their brains that just won't let them understand.
Well, and it's weird because I'll talk to people and it's like, yo, you're literally looking for the confirmation bias. Like you're not really trying to have a conversation. You see it on social media all the time, right? People ask questions so that they can argue the answer, not that they really want to understand the answer.
I really need a better internet. It's freezing left and right.
Or show their hand, so to speak. You know, and those ones that are really, there are people I'll engage with because I know you're asking a genuine question, but then there are people that I'm just not going to engage with. And this is liberal, conservative, or otherwise, because I know you're looking to argue an answer. I'll let somebody else within the thread deal with that.
Do you ever
Mike's good for that, debating my friends or my Facebook friends.
Sometimes.
Not all
Do you
the
ever
time.
find
Yeah.
Facebook debates to be effective though? Like, have any of you ever debated someone on Facebook and had them say, "Oh yeah, I see your point"?
I have.
Yeah, a few times.
Really?
Yeah, I've actually changed people's opinions, but it's because I carry myself a certain way. One, I'm never offended, even if you're offensive. Like, I'm not going to respond to you. I'm not going to argue with you. Like, I've been called things and I just continue to carry myself with grace. You know, especially because I don't like the whole concept of a keyboard warrior, right? I hate this concept. Like, you know, the things that you say on the side of the keyboard aren't representative of you. You would not say them to me if we were sitting next to each other. However, I'm never going to type or say anything that I wouldn't say to you. That's just who I am. Like, I'm not ever going to type something that I wouldn't say to you. I'm not going to speak to you in a way that I wouldn't. I'm comfortable if I see you, I say it. So I try to carry myself a certain way. And as such, I have changed people's opinions. I've actually been in threads. I can think of one thread in particular some years ago. A woman, a friend of mine, she posted a video of these two Black kids fighting in a park. And as they're fighting, like the one, you know, it was pretty much, you know, couple kids who were cheering on the fight was like, yo, hit that nigga, get that nigga, da 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 da. So she prefaced her video with the question, why can they say the N-word? If I say the N-word, I would be accused of being a racist. How come they can get away with it? Blah, 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 blah. And because I know her, right? I'm like, well, I'll entertain this because I know this person. And it's not like I know you casually. Like I hang out at your house, we smoke blunts together, the whole nine. So I answer a question and I said, well, I told her, I said, you know, there's within our culture, it's debatable if the word is acceptable, but I'll tell you that it doesn't mean what you're implying it means. You know, the context that you're using it in, it doesn't mean what you're implying it means. And not only that, if I tell you that it doesn't mean that, you can't tell me, you can't give the word your own definition any more than I can take like Cosa Nostra and say, no, it means this. If you tell me it means what it means, then I can't then choose to give it a different meaning to support an argument because it's a logical fallacy, it's a false argument. So somebody else came on and he was very upset that I was explaining this to her. You know, he's a white guy and he's like, no, this is what it means. And you just refuse to believe it. And I'm like, okay, well, I'm telling you, it doesn't mean this. And then another woman came on and she was upset. And in the process of the conversation, she was like, you know, so just to make a long story short, she thought I actually turned on my friend because she didn't know how, this woman's name was Angela. She didn't know how well I knew Angela. And I said, Angela, if I tell you what it means and that it doesn't mean what you think it means, then you have to accept it. You have to give me the benefit of a doubt and you have to accept it. If not, then what you're doing with your original stat update is getting away with using a word in a context that you think is negative and yet you're using it, which kind of isn't, you know what I mean? Like you're getting away with doing that. And so she said to me, yeah, now you're turning on her. And I said to her, I said, listen, I said, Angela's a friend of mine. And I said, and I'm answering her question because I know her to be a genuine person who is genuinely asking a question. I'm not turning on her. But if she doesn't accept my answer, and I just kind of explain, like, you know, I personally feel like if you're not a Black person and I trust you, then I have to be able to let you use certain dialogue in conversation in order for us to grow, in order for all of us to, you know, like some words just can't be off the table, but I have to trust you. I have to understand your intent and vice versa. You understand what I'm saying? Like, you can't come to me and be like, well, Ish, why, like, for instance, Erica, say you and I were very close and I trusted you and you came to me and and I believed you and you genuinely wanted to know, Ish, what is the difference between the word nigger and nigga? Well, I can't get offended because you asked me the question. At what point do I have a response? Right, but if you were comfortable enough to ask me because you genuinely wanted to know, you genuinely wanted to know how we use it in our culture because you're trying to understand a thing or another and for a genuine reason. Well, then at what part of the educational process am I responsible for? You understand what I'm saying? Like, at what point do I say, okay, this is Erica. I know Erica's character. I know that Erica is a genuinely good person and she's not asking me this question for any other reason than she wants to understand the thing and she trusts me. It's not someone, she wouldn't just go ask Black people this. She trusts that she can ask me. You understand what I'm saying? So at that point, I think that dialogue is important. And this is what I was explaining. Like, then we can have this dialogue because I trust that you're asking for the right or altruistic reasons. So then we can have a dialogue and I know that you're going to come away educated and with a perspective that you didn't have before. And that's all. That's how we kind of grow together. You understand what I'm saying? This is a problem that I've had, not really had. I've been trying to understand at what point Black people are, because I see a lot of people saying lately things like, well, it's not a Black person's responsibility to educate. Remember, we had this conversation recently. You know, it's not a Black person's responsibility to educate. And I'm like, well, at what point do we have, you know, we can't just demand certain things, which we have a right to demand and have certain expectations, but then not be a part of the process of education.
But I think that sentiment that sentiment comes from taking a lot of bullshit, though, right? It's not from the
right. You're right.
Not from the sentiment of, you know, a good friend trying to figure things out. It's like being on social media, being inundated with people trying to
with garbage.
Yeah. And even if it's not garbage, it's still a lot, right? And it's like,
and a lot of times it's garbage. So a lot of times it's why are you killing each other in the street if Black Lives Matter? Like stuff, garbage. You know what I mean?
It's also like an inability to educate yourself. Like, I think, you know what? There's books, there's movies, there's resources for you to get to adulthood and fucking know at least some of this shit. And if you get to adulthood,
go on, Erica.
I was just gonna say, if you get to adulthood and you're not learning a little bit about Black culture, I think at that point you made a choice not to learn it.
Now, what you said, the things that you listed are interesting because I've been critical of that in the sense that I kind of know people. I don't want to say Black people, just human nature, right? Like, far be it for the white person to say, you know, I get it because I read the book on it. Like, we're not going to let you live that down. You know what I mean? And like, I just know the nature of people. You know what I mean? Like, that one white person was like, you know what? I read the book.
Well,
Listen,
especially you said movies, right? Like,
you watch the movie?
Of course. All right. You don't want to be that asshole that says, I watch The Daily Show. I know. But at the same time, if you're out there and you're seeking out this information, you're going to learn a few things. It doesn't give you the license to, like, I don't know what the word is, white-splain? The racial term doesn't give you the option to white-splain in a conversation, but it should at least give you the building blocks to understand the most basic things, you know?
Yeah. Like, all Black people don't eat chicken, fried chicken and watermelon.
Right. Like if you grow up and you don't know that shit, and you're asking someone a question and that's the real question,
and
that's a choice.
Why? And back to your friend, like, I don't know, man. Like, I'm confused. Like, why certain white people want to have permission to say the N-word? It's like,
that's the thing too. It's not your word. Don't say it.
Sense to me. Like, I know some friends want to learn. I've had friends like that, and
preach. You're right.
I'm gonna err on the side of love and coming together and forgiving people and all that kumbaya stuff. Like,
it's because they love the music. It's because
no, you're right. Though I love this.
They get into the music so much. They get into the music.
Like me, why would I want to be like, I want to say fuck? Like, it feels good to say fuck sometimes, but it's not like I want to go and ask somebody, why can't I say fuck at this moment? You know? Does that make sense?
But you can say it though. I mean, imagine if you couldn't say it.
I would be okay with it because I know the history.
I've never been upset that I couldn't say the N-word.
As a Somali woman who is Black, even though I do say the N-word, I feel uncomfortable because Maxie's mom told me, she's an African American old lady too, and she's like, yeah, it was used, my grandma, it was used when they were, like, you know, enslaved and all this stuff. So to me, coming from a different culture, I don't feel comfortable using it, you know, even though I'm allowed to say it, but if African American people want to use it and the way they use it, I totally understand.
But you're right, though, it is debatable.
Yeah, because, but I think nobody who's not African American should not feel comfortable going, oh, I can't say it in the song. Like, I say ninja sometimes, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, like, there's just ways you feel good about. So I'm just saying that there's something, I know that they're human, but I think that there's something kind of wrong with them, that they want permission for that, because this was used to demonize your own brother. And it was something horrible. Why would you even want to say that word? Unless you're African, like, you know what I'm saying?
We did an entire show. We did an entire show on if the word nigger, nigga, and negro have the same meanings. We had a very lengthy conversation on that, and you know, so I mean, there's that.
As people, there's certain things we can have discussions about, but white people or anybody who's not African American asking permission to fucking use that word, I think it's just another way of disrespecting.
Why that?
I agree.
A sentence you hear over and over again. What can I say?
In the most hurtful way ever. And it's
why do you need to say that word, right?
And it's just another way of say that word.
Oh yeah,
honestly,
it's privilege, you know.
yeah.
Well,
And
with my friend, she didn't ask. She didn't ask to say it because it's not a word she would
yeah.
say.
I'm
But
not putting your friend
she
down.
asked. No. Listen. She's grown. You know what I mean? I dealt with the situation. At one point, I felt offended, but I didn't show the offense. I just told her, listen, if you don't accept my answer, then absolutely what you're doing, and but what she was asking was, why is it okay for Black people to say it? Is pretty much was the crux of her question.
Why are you have a problem with Black people saying anything? They can say whatever the fuck they want to say.
Well,
I think of it a little bit, so it's like the word bitch, right? I had a male feminist once tell me, I said, we're going to see this movie, bitch. And he said, oh, I don't say that word. You shouldn't say it either. It's my word to choose whether or not to say it. It's about my gender.
Yeah.
I can say it and I can take it back.
Mike, we talked about this, remember?
Yeah,
During the incogNegro show. But it's so funny because I had a friend of mine.
During the nigga show. I love it.
I had a friend of mine, and she's white, and I had used the word nigga. And she's like, oh my God, mind you, like her kids are mixed, right? She's like, oh my God, don't you ever say that word around me again. And I'm like, huh? I'm like, wait a minute, what?
It's not her place to say that to you.
Yeah.
And I said, if you chose to call one of your girls, I don't use profanity, but if you chose to call one of your girls the B word, it's not my place to tell you not to. And she immediately got it. Like, I didn't even have to say anymore. You know what I mean? I'm like, she's like, so it's, I didn't even have to say no more. I'm like, it's not my place. I'm not going to call the woman that, but it's not my place. I know that women refer to each other and it's not my place to be like, yo, I don't ever want to hear you. You know what I mean? If it's my daughter talking to, her mom, I'm going to have to check you. You know what I mean? But other than that, like, it's just not my place to tell. It's not my, you said it perfectly, Erica. You said it better than I can say it.
Well, there's still a lot of male feminists that'll come at you if you say it. That's feminist mansplaining right there.
Yeah.
Come at a woman?
Oh yeah, many times I've had in the community that I kind of lived in when I first moved to Philadelphia, a lot of really hardcore feminist males who were very comfortable telling a woman not to use that word. And I was not cool with that.
See, I'm not, I don't have a problem with women using the word because I understand how the word nigga is used in the Black culture.
Mm-hmm.
So with an intimate understanding of that, I understand that you have a different definition, several different definitions. You understand what I'm saying? Kind of like there's 100 definitions for the word nigga in our culture. There's like so many definitions, it's the same word, but when used a certain way, it could mean like my enemy. You know what I mean?
Even if there weren't, the default should never be to explain to someone what they can or can't say. Like I have gay friends who use language that I would never use. But I've never once thought to explain to them what they should or should not be saying. It's just ridiculous.
Well, I explain to my straight friends when they say things like that's gay. I'm like, yo.
People still say that?
Yeah.
But
that's not cool.
But that's obvious though, right? Like that's the point is like why
No, I was just throwing that out there.
Yeah. But the point is like why would anyone like explain to someone in a group? It's almost like you're trying to show them that you're woke or something, or what are you trying to do? Right? Like what's the point of that? Or that it actually offends you so much that you've got to say something?
What is that, right? On the baseline, if society is using a word against you, it is your word to take back and reclaim and use in a positive way with your community if you choose to. And it is your community that gets to choose, and people outside that community do not get to say whether or not you get to say that word.
Yeah, at the end of the day, it's just, we should just call it what it is. It's just like kind of condescending and like patronizing to like come to someone and be like, oh, that's offensive. I would never use that word. That's like, good. You should.
Yeah, take your offensive somewhere else.
It's like, Thank you. I'm glad that you would not, as you should not.
Better recognize.
Speaking of that word, which I'm not going to say, but I don't know if you know the word for in Mandarin, but this came up last week. I heard this.
Yes, I think we've. Have we talked about this?
No.
Oh, did it come up in Lovecraft?
No, it didn't. It came up on NPR because there was a professor I think in San Diego, who was using it in his online classes to talk about different dialects and how certain dialects in certain languages can be offensive to other people because the words mean different things in different languages.
Yeah.
And the professor ended up getting suspended or fired. And it was just really interesting to me because I have friends who are Chinese who speak to each other in Mandarin, and the first time I ever heard them saying that to each other, I was like, "Whoa, what?" So I asked,
Saying,
I was like, "What
saying
does that
what?
mean?"
They say
I'm not
there's
gonna
a
say the
word.
word.
There's a Mandarin word. Well, it's not the N word. There's a Mandarin word that sounds like nigga or something like that.
Yeah, and it just means like it's what you say when you can't think of what to say. You're like, I want to go to the. And that's all it is. And once
I mean, a lot of Black people use that when they can't think of what to say either, but that's neither here nor there.
No, I saw that on what is it called? The Comedy Central.
Oh yeah, the Daily Show touched on it a little bit.
Yeah. You did a great job, Erica.
Remember, Mike, we had the conversation on the show about the guy who got fired because he used the word niggling.
Yeah, was that the word?
It was niggling.
Okay.
For basketball or something like that, or no?
I can't remember what it means. It didn't have anything to do with racism at all whatsoever. But the people who heard it were offended, so he got fired. Remember, Mike, we were having a conversation about it. We only came across it because it was in the wiki article.
Yeah, well, then I brought up, and I remember you disagreed with me on this, but I was like, wouldn't you be suspicious if there was like a person that was always using the word niggardly with you?
I think that's what it was. Like, was it niggardly?
Like, well, that's what I brought up. I don't know if that's what he got fired for. But you were like, Mike, but that's not what that means. I'm like, I know, but wouldn't you be kind of suspicious if there were a white person that was always using that word with you?
100%.
That's the question. Like, I think he really was just.
Go on. I'm sorry.
I think this professor, like, I don't know him, so I'm just talking to my ass. But it feels like he was probably really just trying to like give a lecture on languages and this and that. But for all I know, he could have just been taking it as an opportunity to say the word over and over again. But I was surprised because, again, I've heard my Chinese friends say it to each other over and over and over and over, and it really means you know.
Yeah. No, I didn't even know that's what it meant.
It's interesting because I said to Mike, because he had, in response to the niggardly conversation, I said, well, should I be fired because women are offended that I call my pants britches? Because it sounds like the B word. No, but it sounds like the B word.
Yeah, but
right?
Wait, did you actually use that as an example?
Yeah, I use britches.
Oh, that's kind of that's a rough example. That's a rough example.
I'm like, man, my britches is tight.
My britches are tight. My bitches are tight.
Money over britches. Next thing I know, I'm getting fired.
That is a very well-defined word, though.
It's more like if you said these pants are bitchin', then that's kind of like, maybe that's a little on the fence.
Yeah, if I had Chinese friends right now and they use that M word a lot, or I would be like, you know what? I'm just too sensitive and too paranoid, so you have to know every single word around me from now on. Because you never know. It's like the way you feel. Like, people have to watch out for each other.
Right.
You know?
But if you're talking about someone who was born in China and lived there most of their life and then came to the United States without even knowing that word would be offensive, and then you want them to change the way they speak after years and years and years, that would be hard, especially for a word like
Yeah,
if someone told you to stop saying tomorrow.
Yeah, but I would try my best or not do it in front of that person. You know what I mean? Like, it's
kind of interesting. It's what orientation is for. You know, like before I went to Japan when I was younger, you know, they teach you some of the basic language you'll need to know. They teach you some of the stuff that you really can't do, like wear your shoes indoors and stuff like that. And maybe for an orientation coming here, they'd be like, just so you know, this word that you say, it just has a totally different connotation.
It's a little bit different sounding of it. It's slightly different enough where when you hear it, you're like, yeah.
But I think where especially is like if you go into like a Chinese restaurant and they're speaking, you know, amongst themselves, and you hear it a bunch, and you're like, you know, you don't. And
you think they're talking about you while you're sitting there waiting for your food. Yeah.
So Mike, I do have something that speaks to your point because I'm back on that. So for niggard or niggardly, the definition is an excessively parsimonious, miserly, or stingy person. However, it does go on to say, and this speaks to your point. First of all, its origin is 1350 to 1400, Middle English, but from Old Norse, right?
Okay.
But it does go on to say the words niggard and niggardly are often misinterpreted as racial slurs because they sound like what is probably the most offensive word in the English language. Actually, niggard dates back to Middle English. The first element was borrowed from a Scandinavian source, and ard is a pejorative suffix. The adjective and adverb niggardly is a modern English formation from nigger. Historical linguists and others familiar with the etymology of these words know that they are not truly related to the word nigger. However, the source of a term is not as important as how it is perceived and used in contemporary language. So even if the words niggard and niggardly are not racial slurs in their etymologies, meanings, or historical uses, it may be wisest to avoid these terms. The connotation or perception of any word is determined by how it is used, received, and interpreted. Niggard and niggardly may be offensive to many speakers because of the speculative but false etymology. So there you go.
Yeah, well, you know what I think that can be summed up in 2 words, which is just common sense, you know, or I don't know, maybe just I don't know if grace is right. Yeah, I feel like there's just a certain common sense to it all. Like, because you could be a stickler and be like, no, I love the English language, and niggardly is just
that was
another
me.
word. Yeah, niggardly is just another word, and I want to be able to use it. And it's like, okay, well, you know, that's how bad that other word is. That, like, even a word that sounds very close, you might want to be careful, or just use niggardly around, you know, your white friends, you know?
I think, like, if we all come from a place of love and are respectful, even though this sounds corny, and we just are sensitive to people's traumas and the way people feel and what they go through, I think life is better that way. Like, I know what to say, even though I'm super close to certain friends, I know what not to say to bring up certain things that bug them, you know? You know, it's just, that's how, if we all just came from that place, I think it would be a lot better.
No, you're
Empathy.
definitely right. Yep, yeah, empathy for sure.
And then also being patient with people who may not know yet. Like someone who just came here from China, if you take the time to tell them, hey, don't say like that anymore, like that's better than the first time they say it. And you're like, what the fuck? And they're like, I didn't know.
I'm like, if you don't understand the language, get out of the country. No, I'm kidding.
I heard that so many times in my life. I'm like, no, you go back.
Oh, that's horrible.
Right. Yeah.
I agree with the empathy thing. That's my problem as a liberal with liberals. It's just my problem. Like,
empathy can only go so far.
They're like, this person doesn't even understand my language, and they're trying to get me to stop saying This person must be a language teacher of some sorts, or you know,
or just racist.
Well, that's kind of the point that Ronnie Chang made on the show. Was he was like, well, we had the word first, so maybe the racists should stop saying it on the Daily Show. Yeah, he was like, but it's like it's too late. They already ruined it. So
yeah, but no, it's different if you're in China. But like if you're in America and it's really sensitive to the African American people, like I think you should try your best. Just like if I was in China, I wouldn't say something, you know.
Yeah, you gotta try.
Yeah,
you gotta try.
I'm gonna try for your black ass. I'm gonna do it for you.
Yeah, I think there has to be give and take and a happy medium and a willingness to understand on both sides.
Well, you know, there have been plenty of black people who stopped using the N-word when they went to like African nations because it was frowned upon over there.
Yeah, I wouldn't.
Particularly, Richard Pryor was definitely very comfortable using it, and when he went to Africa, he stopped using it because it was just, it had a bad connotation over there, and he didn't want to be that guy. So, you know, other folks have followed suit and done the same thing. So it's all based on empathy. It's all empathy based.
Yeah, I had to learn the hard way when I lived in Germany not to talk about Nazis.
Ooh,
Oh, yeah.
You talked about
No, I'm
Nazis in
serious.
Germany?
Yeah.
What were you doing?
I was in Germany and I was asking questions and I didn't know until somebody who was German and they were very understanding, who I worked with, told me, like, and the side of Germany that I lived on, west in Frankfurt, they told me like it's something that they're ashamed about and people are offended by it. Like people get offended by it, and I didn't know.
He was like, I did not see that one coming.
Yeah, but that's only one half of Germany. Like the other side, Berlin and that part of Germany, like they're not offended.
Oh, that's interesting.
Well, that's not necessarily true. I have a friend that lives in Berlin, and her last name, and maybe I shouldn't say her last name because I'm outing her, is Adolf, and she gets a lot of trouble because like people are not comfortable with her last name being Adolf.
Oh no,
and
no,
she's from Berlin.
Yeah, no, I don't mean like, okay, so let me restate that. On the side of Germany that I lived on, you could go to jail for expressing or doing anything that offends people in regards to, you know, that era of their history, which is just kind of different on the other side, on the Berlin side is all. Mm-hmm. Not that there aren't people over there who aren't ashamed of it. I didn't want to make it seem that way. You know what I mean? It's just, it's like two different countries. Not that it's bad over there. Like I didn't feel when I went to Berlin, or you know what I mean, when I went to like the beer fest and all that, like I didn't feel like any different than when I was in Frankfurt. You know what I mean? Like it's not like, I'm not saying like they're all over there, you know, marching and, you know, goose stepping and, you know, not at all. You know what I mean?
Was one of these is this a difference between like East and West?
Yeah, but there is a political party over there.
In Germany too, like certain places will not put up with it, and certain places, or like they can talk about it or whatever, you know?
Yeah, there's a political party over there, and their literal slogan is, I'd watch it on TV, come on every day, Ausländer raus, which literally means, I guess the direct translation is Ausländer go. Like outsider, outlander, out immigrant, like go, get out of our country. Like that was their campaign slogan. It would just come on TV every day.
Oh, I saw the ad. Like they had a pregnant lady, and they said if we wanted newcomers, we'd make our own.
Which side?
It's a big political party too.
Yeah.
Which side do you get in trouble for making reference to it on?
So I can't remember if I lived on the west or whatever side Frankfurt is on. You don't get in trouble. Okay. I just can't remember if it's east or west. I believe Berlin is East Germany. So the eastern side was the other side of the wall. You don't really get in trouble. And not that they frown upon it in Germany, period. Let me say that.
Okay.
They certainly frown upon it in Germany, period. But you can get in real trouble on the, like, it's weird because like,
wasn't the west side the American? Wasn't the west side the American?
I just can't remember. Sorry. It's been so long since I lived here. If I lived in Western, I lived on the American side,
right?
Which would, I guess you can't really call it the American side, but the side that we have a heavy American presence in. Like literally, the first city I lived in was called Kaiserslautern, which we called K-Town or Little America.
Okay.
You know what's funny in this country? I did notice like how some white people are like, oh, why can't we talk that way to black people or say the N-word, but they will never say that when it comes to like women issues, things or slang for women or Asians or, you know.
Really, you have met white people that want to say the N-word but are not offensive towards any other race?
They don't want to say the B word?
Like nobody is very comfortable. Nobody would ever say, oh, can I say that to the Jewish people? Or can I say that to the Asian people? You know what I mean? Ask permission for that. But all of a sudden, everybody wants to ask permission for fucking anything that has to do with African American people, you know?
Well, right. That's not weird. Everything that African Americans do and not just African Americans. I can say this about other marginalized groups, but particularly African Americans. Everything that we do is questioned. If we're upset about something, why are you upset? If like everything that we do as a group is questioned, and that's been since civil rights. Like literally, why are you mad? And then you have to kind of explain to me why I shouldn't be mad at something.
Mm-hmm.
I was telling somebody this on social media recently, Brian, when I said to him, because he said something, and I'm like, dude, because I was kind of taking liberals to task right after Ahmaud Arbery, but before George Floyd, because I just thought there was a lot of, I was calling it emoji speak, but people being action weak, meaning I see a lot of so-called liberal allies that don't look like me saying a lot of things on Facebook, but not really doing anything. Like, where is the white Million Man March? And where is something really of substance? This is pre-George Floyd, but post Ahmaud Arbery. In that week when I was really feeling some type of way. And so I just took all of my liberal allies to task on social media. And a friend of mine came on and he was like, a lot of us want to do stuff, but we don't have the power. And I'm like, bruh. And he's a white guy and, he's a libertarian. I'm like, bruh, let me tell you something, man. All these things that people cling to for their argument of why America is great, all of these things have been bought and paid for by women, by marginalized people. Like all of the things that we say that you cling to and say make America great. Y'all didn't make them great.
Nope.
But you're quick to tell us why our country is so great. You're quick to come and tell me, you're as a black person, you have opportunity. You ain't make sure that I had this opportunity.
Do you know
you ain't make sure that these women had these opportunities. You didn't make sure that
not to make an excuse, but there is another aspect of this that's kind of obvious but unspoken right now, is like, it's the cool aspect of everything that black folks do that folks want to take part in. Like, they don't want the blood, sweat, and tears, but they want to say the words, and they want to look cool, and like the whole N-word thing, like no one cared, no one even knew what that word was. Like, we knew what it was, but white America didn't have this infatuation with using the word in a cool way until the 80s, right? Like when it was more like hip hop was becoming a thing, and even really like in the 90s.
It didn't become a part of my vocabulary until the 90s.
I have one quick thing to add. So like, I'm on this bandwagon about like learning about like African American history and their culture and everything. So like I'm not saying all immigrants, like, but I am from Somali and I did come here as a refugee. So like the way we were taught was like kind of like white people made America great. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So like we come here and we're African American people and we're like, oh, they're yo-yo-yos. You don't want to be like this with like them and blah, blah, blah. And then the more like I see things, and white people always like, oh, why can't they pull them up by themselves by the bootstraps? And I literally learned like African American people are the definition of pulling yourselves up by the bootstraps against all odds. They literally had to fight for every single thing in this country. And this part of the reason this country is great is because of African American people.
No, it's a big part.
Yeah,
women,
big
women.
Big. Second, I have this discussion with nurses at work and all these other places, like, volunteering. All the foreigners always going to me, oh my God, we made it. Why can't they not make it? Something like that. You know what I mean? And I'm like, seriously, you came to a state house. They literally fought for every single right that you have right now. They had to fight for your right to vote. Every single right that you have on paper. Doesn't mean you don't get discriminated against. They fought for African American people in this country. And so you stop with your, people don't give African American people in this country enough credit and love that they deserve. You know what I mean? And
not to mention all the time that our businesses were torn down. Yeah. I mean, people didn't even realize about Black Wall Street until they watched a popular TV show this year.
It's really disgusting.
And they don't even realize that there were like lots of other Black Wall Streets and lots of other Harlems and
like 70 easily.
Yeah. Well, so there's so many things in U.S. history that is, I mean, so first thing that's not taught in U.S. history that should be taught is that the reason the U.S. became a superpower is because of slavery, because they were exploiting people for free labor, and that gave them the opportunity to build up the superpower. And the reason there's families in the United States that have had wealth for hundreds of years is because of slavery. And then it evolved into every facet of U.S. history, and it's not just U.S. history. So I was a dance major in college, and I was predominantly focused on African dance, but that was just like a little cute little passion project that my university was doing. In the dance history classes, what we learned was the history of ballet. There is so much more history if you look at the history of African dance and the dances of the diaspora than there ever was coming from ballet. Ballet is the history of the monarchy. That's what that is. And that is what you learn. You learn, well, there was ballet that came first. That was the first style of dance ever. And then all these dances evolved from it. Instead of learning like African dances existed long before ballet, Aboriginal dances existed long before ballet, and they influenced all these dances all over the world.
Right.
You know, it's everywhere.
Yeah. Well, it's like, how could they not have?
I just want to say really quick too, to add to Nafisa's point, that marginalized groups of people in this country, you know, certainly are the responsibility for America being great again. And that includes, you know, African Americans, women, LGBTQ community, like all of these groups had to fight for rights that, you know, some white male member of the patriarchy is going to stand up and say America's great because of these things. And you had nothing to do with it.
Yeah. That's why, like, Make America Great is like, I don't even understand how America is letting this man be president in so many ways, but I don't know.
Right. Like, why aren't we doing something more aggressive about it?
The
Because
reason immigrants are here is because of the 1965 Act of Immigration. You know what I mean?
And
In the 1920s, no Black person was allowed. But when the Civil Rights Movement happened, like, people had the courage to say, hey, put this in there too. And then people from Africa were allowed. You know what I mean?
And one thing I do want to say, me personally, I just want to say my own personal, like, I don't have anything against white people. And I want to recognize that a lot of these changes were made because there were allies that were white.
Yep. That's why.
Well, one thing to know is that a lot of our history is taught around celebrating wealthy white men. But throughout that history, there has always been people in poverty, white men in poverty.
I was going to say the poor class.
The poor class
and
women.
Rednecks were not the rednecks that they are right now. They actually like were anarchists, and they fought for people, and like they were against police, and they were poor, and they were for people, and they weren't racist.
And
no, they're advocates.
Yeah.
Now they're victims of white male patriarchy, and they feel like people that don't look like them are taking from them.
That word got taken.
Sells rednecks with big houses and trucks and with the Confederate flags.
No, it was the bandanas, right? That they wore as part of their labor movement. That they got them the name redneck. The
they
red
got
bandanas.
co-opted. They got co-opted.
I thought it was also the sun beating against their necks.
Well, that's what they say.
That's a stereotype, bro.
But there was a movement, a workers' movement, and they were wearing red bandanas, and that's where the original.
St. Peter, don't you call me, 'cause I can't go. Oh, my soul to the company store.
I know that song. You would get the go back, and you have to give the paycheck back to the store because the store owned the whole everything. Yeah.
If you look at every element of what history was taught in the United States, people, and how incorrectly it was taught. Like, for example, we learned that Paul Revere, had that famous ride, but what we don't know is that Paul Revere's daughter rode most of the time and then met Paul Revere right here, and then he rode about this far and finished.
Because he had to do with his family's wealth.
Yeah, he got the credit for like what his daughter did, basically. Like, it's always about who's the white man we can give credit for this,
Yeah.
I know the Revere family was filthy rich.
Yeah.
Like rich.
Rich.
Like silver. They had big investments in silver.
Yeah. That's what happened to us when we left Somalia, like our family was well off, but we didn't invest in like the euro, or the US dollar, or gold, or whatever. And then we went down the drain.
Well, you probably didn't want to invest in the US dollar, but the euro would have been a good investment.
Mm-hmm. But yeah,
Euro
like,
would have
shout
been
out to
really good
African American people, man. It sucks that everybody looks down on them and it doesn't give them the credit that they deserve and the love. Like, even as an immigrant, like every day I'm fighting with people telling them, you know what, like, you're brainwashed. They are very educated people and they fight really hard and they fought for everything that we have. And this is our responsibility. Just like you guys are voting to vote Donald Trump out because, like the way you said, to protect immigrants, we need to protect you guys in your history and for us to learn that.
Well, that's what I think. That kind of goes back to my point where I feel like some people aren't consciously making the choice to be assholes, is that since kindergarten, they were taught history incorrectly. Yeah. So they've been getting the wrong information from day one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And so I think it falls on us as people who kind of are seeing it to push things like the 1619 Project and correct the way history is taught.
Yeah.
Donald Trump opposes the 1619 Project.
That's not surprising.
He doesn't want it in schools.
Pass a new law where it's like real American history. We're going to learn about patriotism or something like that. He, in rebuttal to the 1619 Project, or what is it, 16?
I mean, there are 2 days that a friend of mine that Flav debated often, and you know he's a good guy. I already referred to something he said earlier that he was like 2 days should be national holidays. The day that, you know, women were granted rights in June 19th.
Juneteenth, yep.
Mm-hmm.
Those 2 days should be national holidays.
When I was in grad school in Jamaica, it was August 1st is Emancipation Day. And so I was there for Emancipation Day and there were parades, celebrations everywhere. And I thought, you know what? We don't have this in the United States. I did at that time, I was like 21 or something. I didn't know about Juneteenth. And I was just like, it was shocking. I was like, I don't even know what day this would happen.
Buffalo, right?
Yeah, I know. No one told me about Juneteenth. I didn't know about Juneteenth until, you know, much later. I was probably like late 20s when I learned about Juneteenth.
I'm proud to say that Buffalo has one of the biggest Juneteenth celebrations in the country.
And
it might be the third. It might be the third largest in the country or in the world.
I bet you I've been to it and just didn't know what I was at. You know what I mean?
I think that's what I learned about like Juneteenth. I remember, yeah, they had
Speaking of Buffalo, did you know that the town of Tonawanda still had a sundowner sign up until recently?
What does this mean? What does sundowner mean?
Have you been watching Lovecraft?
I haven't, no.
You should watch it right away.
Fuck Lovecraft.
There are towns where
when I was in.
She's like, he's racist.
There were times
excited.
where
It's a show. I just can't get into it. It's a good show for Black people.
It's a good show for everyone. There were times where it was illegal for Black people to be out past sundown. And the town of Tonawanda still had a sign up decrying that it was a, sundowner area.
There's more than just a sign, Flavy. I gotta tell you, because I actually wrote about this. I used to write a zine when I was like 17. You know, I'd like write about the
dope. That's dope, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like so.
Cool.
I wrote it. This is talking about sexism. I wrote it under a pen name, and I would distribute it and say that like my male friend wrote it, so people would read it without bias.
Yeah.
And not only did they have a sign, they had a whistle. So
they had a curfew.
They had a curfew. They had a whistle, and this went out up until like 1993 or 94.
I grew up with a curfew in Tonawanda.
Yeah, that was the sundown town thing they would have. I think it was 9 o'clock or something. That 9 o'clock, that whistle would go off, and that was from Tonawanda being a sundown town. That whistle meant if you were Black, you better get off the streets.
Yeah, there was definitely a curfew growing up, when I grew up in Buffalo, but there was a curfew in Tonawanda. And interestingly enough, it wasn't until the late 90s, like, being where I came from and how I operated, like it wasn't until the late 90s where we were comfortable driving in Kenmore after 9 o'clock because you're going to get pulled over, period.
Like the remainder.
Now I live in Kenmore, but
Do you have a
I'm
picture
sorry,
of that sign?
Me?
Yeah. Have you seen a picture of that sign you're talking about?
I haven't, but my sister's podcast was talking about it. I just heard
really?
about it earlier today. Yeah.
Wow. Man.
That's
Reparations
crazy.
definitely owed to you guys. So
I can't hear again. My work needs to pay for an expansion of my
anytime they try to do
internet.
something, just be like, this is the proof. You can't even make up for this part, the sundowners part. Forget the slavery. You can't even make up for the sundown part. Like, no more arguing with them. Just take.
I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and I kind of offended him. Not to the point like he's more like a brother, but I know I offended him. He's white guy, you know, his parents, it started because I said something on Facebook because I was mad because somebody responded to something I said with, not directly to me, but in my thread, they responded with, if you don't like it, leave. And my response to that is always, it's usually the product of 18th, you know, late 19th to early 20th century immigration, you know, that are going to tell people of, you know, marginalized people, if they don't like the country, leave. Because, and it's interesting because it's like, that's what you did, right? Like your people didn't like their country, so they left and they came here. However, my people were already here when your grandfather got off the boat from Naples or wherever he came from, you know, in the early 20th century. Like, we was already here and had been here for, you know, 400 or 500 years. So, you know, we were having this conversation, and, you know, he was talking about, he kind of got offended. He did. He told me as much, but he didn't take it personal. But, you know, we were having this conversation. He was like, well, Ish, I don't understand why. He's like, in this day and age, why, you know, this economic equality thing is a big issue when you know, he breaks down, you own your house, you have 2 cars, da 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 da. You know what I mean? You know, I own my house, I have 2. Like, how are we different? And I said, the difference is, while we are equivalent, I am more successful than you are. And he's like, well, what do you mean? And I'm like, well, my grandfather, who didn't have the opportunities that your grandfather had, and couldn't generate the type of generational wealth, or even have the opportunity to do that, to give his children advantages, make sure that his 8 children were able to go to college and get, you know, master's degrees or what have you. Your grandfather had those opportunities. And the difference is, your grandfather just didn't do with what he had, what he should have been. And now you and I are equivalent because of what your grandfather had the opportunity to do and squandered.
Right.
And he kind of got, you know, when I broke it down to him that way, I'm like, that's why I'm like, your grandfather had an opportunity to put you in a position. He just didn't take advantage of it. My grandfather didn't have those opportunities. And while I'm not holding that against you, how many people in this country have certain advantages because of disadvantages that people that look like me had? If my grandfather had a valuable piece of property, there was nothing to protect him from somebody coming, some bank or someone coming and making it difficult for him to keep his property so that they could sell it to someone that doesn't look like him. There were laws during Jim Crow. My grandfather was born in 1904. His father was a slave. He was the youngest of 12. There were laws specifically set up so that my grandfather could not have an opportunity that someone who was white could. And this is what I was trying to explain to him. I'm like, it was Jim Crow. Like, there were specific laws designed so that my grandfather couldn't have the opportunity that your grandfather had. My mother is the youngest of 8 and the only one of his children to go to college to get a master's degree.
That's sexy. Good job.
But then, you know,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Huh?
Sexually attracted to master's degree. Sorry.
Yes, I am. I'm attracted to other things too.
I'm very proud when I say like my daughter is the third generation college educated Black woman in our, you know what I mean? She's the third generation. And to me, that's a big deal because that's not something that Black people have an opportunity to say very often in our country.
I was actually watching this film. I think it was Netflix, could have been Amazon. They follow these students. There's 4 students, and they start filming them when they're in high school, and they are the most likely to succeed in their high school. I wish I could remember what it was called rather than just describe it. But they follow them all the way through college, into adulthood, into their working lives. And it's so apparent by just watching where each kid comes from. Like, it is the most clear representation to me of privilege for someone who doesn't believe it's real. Because of course the kids that come from white middle-class families, everything is so easy for them. And then you have a couple of kids that are Black and their families have problems at home because of poverty, and they have to stop going to school, and they, you know, it's such a clear representation. And it's interesting because I was watching with someone else and he didn't see it. I was like, oh, because it's almost like if you come into it expecting to see it, you see it. You see the privilege being represented. But he was like, no, that person just had to work hard. I was like, did you not just see the same shit I just saw?
Why did they have to work harder? What was, you know what I mean?
Right.
Ad that I saw about like like he brings all the students together, and then the coach is like, everybody who has 2 parents at home, step forward. Everybody who has like, you know, like something, I don't know, I forgot, but yeah, it's crazy. People just need to love each other again and just give each other understanding and just say, hey, I feel where you're coming from, and I think life would be so much easier and we can get over this stuff. But I don't know why anybody doesn't want to do that.
We're
But
going
I
to
don't
war.
do that sometimes for people either, so I don't know.
You think so?
No, that's not.
I don't think so, no.
But
I
like
think it's,
sometimes I do get like, there's times that I don't understand people, but at the end of the day, like after a while, I'm like, you know what, I need to go
It's all
apologize
about-
and try to understand people.
It's all about education. People have to be educated on this stuff. People don't
Correctly.
people don't really understand this stuff on their own. They have to be educated on it. And some people do get it once it's presented to them in the right way. It just takes time for people to be presented the information.
You have to unlearn
some people
things.
don't want to
I
get
had to
it.
learn some of my racism too, and my prejudice, and my culture, and my religion, the way I was raised, you know?
Yeah.
So you're right. It's just being aware, being around more people, and just, you know.
There are those that don't want to get it that are just comfortable being racist.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we can't really focus on those people, you know. Those people
No,
are gonna.
I'm not focused. I'm not ignoring either though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, they're gonna be around, but there are people who, once you explain to them what privilege means, they actually do understand it, and they go from being like dense to like all of a sudden being like, oh, okay, that's what you mean,
Mm-hmm.
you know.
Yeah, what I was just getting at though, Mike, and what I mean is, by example, what I mean is, look how people rebel, so-called good people, right? Rebel against the concept of Black Lives Matter.
Privilege is also ignorance.
When's the last time somebody rebelled against the Ku Klux Klan?
Fuck yeah.
Well, I mean, I think most people don't take the Klan seriously. I mean, most people don't agree with it, you know. Even the people who we would consider racist don't agree with going as far as the Klan. So
Yeah,
I don't know.
but
I don't know.
not taking them seriously doesn't blunt the seriousness of the Ku Klux Klan.
Right, but what do you mean by rebel against them? Like, I don't
like no one speaks out against them.
Yeah, they shouldn't even be able to exist. Like nobody, the way they're talking about Black Lives Matter, or even like, so I think the kids shouldn't even be around. They should be afraid. There shouldn't be no fucking anything like that in America. You're right. Nobody's rebelling against them.
I don't these nobody. I don't know. These nobody things are they never ring true to me. I mean, A
Okay,
bunch of
so
people
there isn't a fervent movement to denounce the Ku Klux Klan like there is
or a law.
Black Lives
Like,
Matter.
I'm even okay with it right now. And
Yeah,
I'm
but-
just like, oh, it's just the KKK.
Yeah, but the KKK is not ringing bells like BLM is.
It is. It's killing people. There's, you know how where you guys were talking about sundown or whatever it is?
Yeah.
That they have it in the South in some cities, and they lynch people. My friend was telling me about this that lived down there in one of those South towns. Like, they literally still do those things, but nobody's paying attention to it.
There's actually statistics on, you can
that goes
actually,
on in this country that we don't see and we don't know about.
Right.
there's
that the KKK is
documented
fucking doing.
statistics on lynching, so you can watch kind of for every year. Of course there's lynchings that go on and reported, I'm sure, but for every year, because I looked this up because I was arguing with someone about this, and I think I lost the argument because of this statistic. There's statistics on how often people are lynched in any given year, and it still happens, but it's definitely way down. So I think most people believe, and maybe poorly, that the KKK isn't a force that needs to be reckoned with because they're a silly little fringe group that no one takes seriously.
But the FBI keeps an accountability of their numbers.
Yeah. Christopher said that the other day. Like, even the guy who went to Mexico and killed all those people, he belonged to a KKK group and he killed a lot of people.
And it stands to reason if you're gonna rebel against Aunt Jemima and the Confederate flag, you're gonna rebel against a group that you know historically lynched people.
Like, I can't articulate who you are, but I'm with you, buddy. Ish. Like, I
think the problem is the perception, right? Like you said, historically, I think people perceive them as a historical problem, not a current problem, right? Like, even the Tiki Torch guys, that was like a big deal, and it was like, what the fuck are these guys doing? And everyone was like against them. But the most I hear the KKK, when people think about the KKK, they think of the cops, they think of judges, they think of people in positions of power who are hiding underneath sheets and who are like racist and a part of these organizations. But I don't think they think of them as out there like BLM is, like actively.
But it's interesting because they are. Like, they have rallies. They contribute to communities. They have like fundraisers and like equivalent to Italian festivals.
Right.
Sorry.
Like, they absolutely are. It's just no one has a problem with it.
Nobody
Black
has
Lives
a problem
Matter
with it.
tries to throw a picnic, and people are all over Facebook talking about the socialist picnic.
What does the rebellion against the KKK look like? Like, would it be exactly?
Like the way they treated the terrorists, the Islam people, like where it should not be allowed, that they shouldn't be around. There should be laws. Like, they shouldn't even be able to have these rallies where policemen are protecting them from me. I remember I was in Duluth a couple of years ago. I stood there against them, and the police are literally protecting them. It's a freedom of speech. And no, hate, stuff like that shouldn't fall under freedom of speech. And please don't get into like all that other like, it's America. No, like, I can't.
Well, no, we do have hate speech laws.
Sorry, guys. I've tossed and turned about this kind of stuff in my head. I'm like, this is not normal.
Nafisa, stop apologizing. Just say what you want to say.
Now, this was,
don't feel bad about it.
Wait, you said that you said this was in Minnesota?
Yeah, Minnesota. They have it every year in every state. They come out, they do their thing, and then they go back, and then people get lynched and like whatever. They speak their piece, and police look it up.
What publicly, like what happens? Is there like an outcry? Are people like?
Yeah.
Is there a big like counter protest?
Yeah, there's protesters like me who come up to them and say that this isn't allowed, and then we make noise to our legislators, and why is this here? Why are they even allowed to come out? But then they pull that freedom of speech stuff.
But it's not getting news coverage then.
Oh, it gets a little bit of news coverage, but it happens so much. Like people get afraid. Oh, there's going to be a big fight, so we're going to have the cops there.
Right.
Like, I've seen,
It
and I
was
think I've seen it in Buffalo too. I think I've seen it in every state that I've lived in for a while.
I've been to the Buffalo one, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they came and spoke at UB. I remember Dwayne and Katie wanted to go protest, and I talked them out of it.
And this was in the the early 2000s. Sorry, I lost my feed again.
For George Floyd, a heavyset white guy came out during the protest in a blue shirt with KKK insignia all over his shirt. And he got confronted by a group of white people who were pissed that he was wearing the shirt, and he brandished a gun. The police came. He didn't shoot anyone. He just pulled out his gun.
I remember that.
A Marine got in his face. Like, the Marine took off his shirt, got in his face, and was like, yeah, like the Marine was going to wreck him. He was like, just do something. So give me a reason. And the police ended up coming and talking to him, and, you know, they just kind of broke it up. But the guy certainly brandished his gun, because it was white. It was a group of white protesters who saw him saying his KKK jargon. And it would look like a cop shirt. It was blue. And it would just he had KKK insignia all over his shirt.
How long ago was this?
This was during the George Floyd protests. Videos was on Facebook. It was during the George Floyd protests. And he brandished his gun because he felt threatened, because it was like, you know, 3 guys, 2 girls. But it wasn't until the Marine, he was like a 40-year-old wounded combat vet. He was kind of diesel, but he was older. You know what I mean? But he's kind of diesel. And he like took off his shirt and got in his face and was like, man, just give me a reason. He was like, just give me an excuse. Just do something so I can.
I guess, Nafisa, what you're saying is that you would like it if the government would just say KKK cannot exist anymore. Like, because I think there are people, you yourself are rebelling against the KKK by protesting them.
Yeah.
And generally, when they do have a rally, you know,
Mhm.
I've been to anti-KKK rallies in Buffalo, and usually before, it's probably different now, but before there'd be like 5 KKK guys and they look like idiots. And so there are people rebelling against them in a sense, but what you'd like to see is not just a rebellion against the KKK, but a piece of legislation that says groups like this cannot exist.
Exactly,
And then,
because they went after Black Panther. They went after like if I came as a Muslim person and if I went out there and said, I hate white people, like the way KKK has established and done all those things, I'd be in jail. But I don't understand how white folks like the KKK can be out there like that and still have police protection.
So I'm just going to explain something really quick. And, you know, it's something I mentioned to Mike when I, you know, felt like, if you're going to get rid of the Confederate flag, why don't you target the KKK? And my point was the impact that a white sheet has on a Black person, right? Like, crosses burned in people's yards, people lynched, unmarked graves all over Mississippi.
Mm-hmm.
And you think that these things don't affect Black people today, but listen to any actor's account of portraying slaves in film and how they have it impacts them emotionally. Like, it actually still impacts them. And I didn't even know this until recently. You know, the guy who played Omar Wallace talks about how he had a breakdown playing a slave in a film. Just the impact of really understanding the scope of what your people went through and how it affected them. Like, now you have to put yourself in that position and understand that mentality, and it actually impacts and affects people. Or anyone who's been to a slave port, you know, off in Senegal, or any of the slave ports that you can go visit, or anyone who's been to a plantation, or anyone who's been to any of these places. There, you know, I remember when I stood in the jail cell where Martin Luther King was in prison, and they took us to the church where those 4 girls got died. I remember how I was impacted. You know, it was very, very difficult. And it was that, and I was a soldier in the military, and it was very difficult for all of the Black people who went there. It was very difficult for us. And I didn't have any clue that it would be that difficult. But then when I got there, I'm like, man, I'm in a place where something horrible happened to people that look like me just because they look like me. Period.
Yeah.
I'm standing where these 4 Black girls got killed in the church bombing because they look like me. I'm standing at the cell where Martin Luther King was in prison because he was fighting for people that look like me. and the impact was overwhelming, and it was that way. Literally, it was like you could hear pin drops, and they might as well have been playing "Swing Low, Sweet Chariot" as the background of life. Like, that's just how it felt. So imagine, the impact it has on people. Forget hate speech. The impact it has on people who have to see these white sheets coming down the street at a rally, or coming down the street, having a parade or a picnic or whatever. Be the KKK. Get rid of the white sheets. Make them illegal.
I think we should start a movement or something like that, or we should get together and just make that our goal, where like they can't exist. Push like some kind of legislator.
I mean, I really can't make you not exist even legally, because you can still just assemble and be who you are and call yourself whatever.
But we want to make racists afraid again, so we're going to make the KKK afraid to come out. That'll be like our law.
But
I definitely don't think that we should ever have to see those sheets again.
Yeah.
Don't you think that if it's kind of like when you remove a leader of a terrorist group and then they just get a new leader? So don't you feel like the KKK, they knew they had an image problem, and that's why those groups like the Proud Boys came to be, because they took all the imagery from before and they changed it so there could be a new movement. So I feel like the same would happen if you tried to say, KKK, you can't exist anymore. Those ideals, the ideology wouldn't go away. The organization would go away, and they would form a new one.
Well, I don't want to think like that. I just want to get rid of people wearing that white thing.
I don't want to see
that's my main goal. Like, I know they're still gonna be around, but I don't want to make it. I don't want to live in a place like I've already come from a war-torn country, and I've already come like from, at least here I feel like I am heard with my voices, and I don't want something like that. I think we missed the mark of like, with this.
You get small victories, right?
Have that.
It's supposed to make me feel a certain way because you took Aunt Jemima off of a syrup bottle, but I still live in a country where I can see the white sheet.
Have a fucking rally.
I can still see the white sheet.
Yeah, get rid of the white sheet.
You took Aunt Jemima off the syrup bottle. You understand what I'm saying? It's like, wait a minute, the white sheet killed people and burnt cross. You know what I mean? Like, historically, they've lynched and killed people and are responsible for, even modern day trauma. Because we are impacted, we are absolutely affected. At least I am, and I know Black people. I don't speak for all Black people, but there are Black people who are absolutely impacted and affected by our history, by what has happened to us. I'm with you though, and I'm with you even further, and I'll take it a step further, Erica, and say that I'm very cognizant that if we launch a direct attack against KKK as an organization, then we open the door for an attack against any organization that enough people deem.
I think that's what they want you to believe. Like it's just that is.
Well, look what they're doing to Black Lives Matter.
Like the KKK stands for something that is inhumane and cruel, just like the Nazis.
But people are changing the Black Lives Matter narrative.
Why was the swastika and everybody should be scared, and like cops are knocking on people's doors if you wear that sign here? But the KKK, no, this is another way of being brainwashed. And I think of like, it's okay for African American people to be disrespected that way. Like,
I mean, that's a great point.
It's horrible. They should not be wearing it, and there's no way my tax dollars or anybody's tax dollars, if they come into town, nobody should protect us. They should be afraid to come out. Keep that shit in your house.
Well, the real question is, how do you do it?
I don't know. That's why I said we should start something. We figure it out. Like, I have no idea, but I'm open to any kind of solutions, and I'll think about it. But like little things like that, like make a big difference.
Because with Aunt Jemima and with Band-Aid, it's like companies finally deciding that what they were doing before wasn't going to fly anymore.
What? I used to ask a friend of mine. Go on, I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, this is an organization that wants to keep doing what they're doing. So how do you stop them? You know what I mean?
Well, I used to ask a friend of mine who's white. I used to ask him. I used to be like, dude, because he's conservative. He's a good dude, you know, and we talk about racial issues. And I'm like, you know, what's interesting is why is it that conservatives who assert themselves as being good people and non-racist never address the fact that they know the KKK and racist groups exist within their party?
Exactly. And to bring it to another note, like I know right now, if anybody does anything to Muslim people outwardly and says, I hate fucking Muslim people, it's a hate crime, and they get arrested or they get a misdemeanor, but they won't do that for the African American people. Or if anybody says anything horrible, or what is it called for the Jewish people? What's the word for when Jewish people are
Anti-Semitism?
Yes. It's considered a crime.
Well, they do have hate crime laws. Like if I get in a fight with a white guy and he screams, you know, the N-word, he's probably not gonna come out of that looking good.
Yeah, I just think it's,
if we just get in a fight, it's different. We both going to jail. But if he screams the N-word during the course of that fight, he's gonna get charged with a hate crime.
Yeah. But I think it could be done, and I think it's a good start. Like, we should just not be okay with it. I don't think we should be okay with the KKK being able to have a rally and then our tax dollars pay for it. Like, that's double disrespectful to Black people, you know?
I agree. I definitely, I got a problem with the sheets for sure. The organizational aspects of it, you know, I can't control that. I do support freedom of speech, and even if you got the right to hate, all of that. But there's certain things that I don't want to tolerate. I definitely am. And again, you know, speaking to your, you know, what you were saying about the whole brainwashing thing, I don't disagree. But the problem is we have an active movement to co-opt and or change the narrative of the Black Lives Matter movement already.
Yeah, so why don't we, but why the Black Lives Matter movement, it's like, even if we went to court, I think the Supreme Court would agree with us. Like, this is, Black Lives Matter was started because Black men are being killed at a disproportionately higher rate than white people. KKK is not even close to that. So, like, I think you're being brainwashed and you're made to feel like you can't change this and that that's okay. It's not okay. It's not okay for a group like that to exist in America.
Well,
yeah, it's not like they would allow Al Qaeda to like march.
Exactly.
Right.
And we're okay with it. And that's like, I'm still baffled. I don't even know how to explain myself, like, when I think of the KKK. And I told you, I've tossed and turned about this.
They know it's domestic terrorism.
In my head.
They know it's domestic terrorism.
It is. What's his name? The last week he said it. What was the date? I think it was 2 weeks ago, where the FBI guy was like, yeah, they're a bigger threat to this country than anything that the Black Lives Matter hasn't done anything, you know? And he was getting mad at Bill Barr or whatever his name is.
He didn't use the word terror, though?
What, for Black Lives Matter?
No, for the KKK.
Oh, he did. He said they're like the white supremacists and those people are a bigger threat and cause more harm. And
No, but did he use the word terror?
Terrorist? I'm gonna rewatch the video and then I'll tell you guys next time.
So you gotta watch these guys very carefully because they know what they're doing.
Okay.
Right.
Even if you think they're on your side, never forget that Bill Clinton let those people in Rwanda die at the hands of genocide because he did not want to use the word genocide. Because the moment that word was used, he told his people not to use that word. Because the moment that word was used, we would have had a mandate to go in under humanitarian efforts and save them. So he did not want to use the word genocide. So when you look at that FBI guy who keeps saying they're a bigger threat, and he won't use the word terror, that means something.
And that's particularly interesting in Bill Clinton's case because he took us to war more than any president in the history of our country. He had no problem going to war.
Racially motivated violent extremism.
Okay, I found it.
In recent years have been responsible.
Wait.
Own domestic radicals are the deadliest, with white supremacists being the largest.
Wait, hold
Now,
on.
the FBI director was asked about the threat of white supremacists at home. He said lone domestic radicals are the deadliest, with white supremacists being the largest group.
Within the domestic terrorism bucket,
Domestic
racially
terrorism
Boom.
bucket.
motivated violent
Oh, he called it terrorists. Okay.
have been responsible for the most lethal activity in the U.S.
Ray also asked about Black Lives Matter.
Have you seen any excessive violence?
And he mentioned KKK as domestic terrorists.
Sitting here right
Yes.
now.
Ray also responding today.
I think the KKK would be the white supremacists. It falls under that.
No. But did he actually use those words? Did he say like the KKK
No,
and terrorists in the same sentence?
no. But I thought they
Nope.
would fall under the same thing because they do.
Yeah, but see, that's
It
the
matters,
problem, though. It matters. They have to say. They have to say it. They have to say it. Otherwise,
Well, either way, I'm still gonna fight it. I think it shouldn't exist.
absolutely.
Yeah,
You
I
need
don't
to be
think.
okay with it and making these kind of arguments, or even trying to like find ways that somebody can find a loophole in our arguments. You know what I mean? And that's how fucked up the world is right now. Like that, we're okay with something like that.
Well, the problem is not the problem. The task is creating an argument that is infallible.
Mm-hmm.
That's just what the task is. It just has to be an argument that you can't find a loophole in. That's the trouble with the law.
In order to take them to task, we have to use our own words against them.
Right. Mobilize, like Winston Churchill. You have to mobilize your words and send them to war. And
That's
the thing
Black
is,
Panthers did, right?
Yeah. Well, that's true. When I go to the union too, like I'm in the union at my job, and I always have to, whenever I'm defending somebody, we think of every single thing that person's gonna say and what they're, you know.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But I didn't think it would be for the KKK. That's my brain still. I can't wrap it around my brain. I'm like, oh my god, it's just wrong.
that's the lawyers. That's the skill of a lawyer. Like they loopholes in law.
Yeah. But I gotta get up in the morning and I gotta get going soon. But this was nice. Longer than I thought. I said I would leave at 10, an hour and some change later.
Yeah. But my last question before you go, when that clip came up, when they were speaking to them, and he brought up who was like a big threat, like who was he talking about? Were they asking him about the KKK?
Yeah, because Bill Barr, it was a rebuttal to what the Attorney General was saying, you know what I mean, and how disgusting he is, and was trying to demonize Black Lives Matter and all these things that he was saying a couple of weeks ago. And I think he said something really insensitive. I forgot what it was, but I need to look it up again. But yeah, it was to that, and Congress was asking him those questions. I think he was being questioned by Congress and a bunch of other different people.
Okay, so the FBI guy
bringing it back to the reality and saying, hey, like Antifa and Black Lives Matter are nothing compared to these domestic threats that we have here, who are white supremacists, you know?
Oh, white supremacists. So he could be talking about it.
What's the word when like something is not real, like an ideology? Yeah, he was saying Antifa is just an ideology. And because Donald Trump and them were saying, oh, these people came on the planes, and Bill Barr had that interview. It was, yeah, and which made me throw up in my mouth when I heard his.
Okay. Technically, he could be talking about it anyway. He could be talking about any of the white supremacists who have been showing up to the protests, or et cetera, et cetera. He may not necessarily be talking about the KKK.
No, he was talking about all domestic group threats in this country, what we find to be more dangerous and what we need to focus on.
And while he didn't say the KKK, which matters, he put white supremacy at the top.
Mm-hmm. I thought like the KKK and white supremacy, I'm just learning. I thought that they were the same thing.
Well, we understand and recognize the KKK to be white supremacists. Mm-hmm. However, legally, like you have to call them white supremacists.
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, and legally you have to call them terrorists. That's the problem. Is if you look up the KKK, they're not even specifically one group. It's actually
right. There's so many different groups.
It's an umbrella term for like many scattered groups, and they died several times and come back, and like.
And they don't all have the same ideologies and leadership, even though the general theme is white supremacy.
Yeah, I know. We have a group here in Stillwater a couple of weeks ago, or a couple of months ago, that were like picking on a Muslim lady and their Aryan brothers or something like that. So, but yeah, this was the FBI director was grilled on voter fraud and election meddling. Attorney General's William Barr faced backlash for his when he said that comments including comparing COVID-19 to slavery, lockdown to slavery, and a bunch of other bullshit.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so that was it, and I fell in love with him. I was like, this man's like, this is what America's about, you know, somebody who stands up for things like that. Not like this administration, which just seems like a third world country here.
Yeah. Well, thanks for agreeing to be on tonight. I appreciate it. And as always, it's always great to talk to you and hear from your perspective.
I didn't realize I was muted.
I'm
rambling.
Recorded.
I've been muted for a while.
What were you saying?
First, I put something in the chat box about there's a school mascot outside of Philadelphia that is called the Ghosts.
Mm-hmm.
Disturbingly similar imagery to the KKK robes, and that mascot lasted a very long time. But that's 10 minutes ago.
Oh wow!
You're
just talking away, huh? Like no one's listening to me.
I was. I don't even remember what I was talking about. I think I was talking about something real good. It was so good, but you missed it.
Oh, say it again. Everything you say is good anyway.
Yeah, enlighten us.
I don't remember. That's what I'm saying. I guess I was talking about the KKK, and I think one of the things I said was the KKK, I don't know if they're even a focal point anymore. I feel like they've become such a normalized part of our culture that when new white supremacist groups and white nationalist groups come around, we see them and we notice them more than the KKK. Mm-hmm. So I wonder if when he was talking about the white nationalist groups, he was talking about the Proud Boys and all these other new groups that are showing up to these rallies with guns and kind of organizing young people.
The Balula, whatever they're called, yeah.
Stormfront.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because the KKK was kind of an aging organization. Some people were recruiting their kids, but it felt like for the most part, they weren't recruiting a lot of people under 40, you know?
But like, that's where all of these things started. If we didn't, like you said, if we didn't normalize in this country, the KKK, these other motherfuckers wouldn't exist, you know?
Yeah.
I just want to say, and this is a horrible segue, but I just have to say it because it matter. I think it'll matter to Flav. They put out the new episode of The Boys early.
It's The Boys. I like boys.
Especially ones with master's degrees.
You know the boys-ish. The Boys is cool and all, but my number one priority nowadays is Raised by Wolves.
Yeah, I know, man. Don't no spoilers, because I'm getting on that, bro.
Okay, you haven't seen any of it yet?
No, not yet. No, okay. And that's cool.
Yeah. Well, you'll be able to do your, what do they call it?
I think I'm going to order HBO. I think I'm going to order HBO Max tomorrow.
Oh, okay. Yeah, give me your.
That means you haven't watched Lovecraft yet?
No, not yet. Well, tomorrow they.
You can use my password.
Well,
okay.
Well, they have a deal tomorrow that ends tomorrow, right? It ends tomorrow. It's like $11 a month for like the next 12 months, but that ends tomorrow. So I'm just gonna sign up for it.
Okay, so you got to get the tail end of the deal, but it's gonna last for 12 months.
Yeah.
Cool.
Fish, I noticed your laugh. It's really cute.
Oh. It's the story of my life right there.
Nafisa, if we're giving out compliments, I was thinking this entire conversation that color looks really good on you.
Thank you very much. Yeah, yellow's my color, honey.
Thank you. By the way,
are you matching the drapes behind you on purpose?
And my bed too. Look at that. Ooh, wow.
Okay, so this is back in your room now.
Mm-hmm.
You're not in your friend's room?
No, this is my room. Today's my
What
house.
What is that fresh thing they always say? What do they say? Does the curtains, what do they say? Yeah, what do they say?
Yeah, that's what they say. That's the American term. I learned it.
The curtains match the drapes?
Yeah.
The carpet. The carpet. Does
Oh,
the
the
carpet
carpet.
match the
See,
Oh,
door?
the carpet,
I knew
yeah.
it wasn't the curtains. See, I knew it
Sorry,
wasn't.
I messed up. I'm not American.
I know.
Yeah, I always think of that because the first time I think of it about redheads, because when I first heard it, they were like, oh, they were talking about a redhead person, and they were like, oh,
Yeah.
is their pubic hair red too?
Mm-hmm. Poor redheads always getting tortured with that question.
I never even knew that was a question.
Really?
No, I just thought that was like what it was. You know what I mean? Like
It's just a way to bully redheads.
Yeah, redhead
like
is fun.
your eyebrows are red, the hair on your head is red, like
Why wouldn't it be?
Your leg hair.
Yeah.
But I did question it. I would be that person who did. I was like, oh.
Wait, but are you really matching your curtains on purpose? Is that like part of the deal?
Oh, I did the yellow and that on purpose, so they go together.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Because you knew you were going to be on Zoom, so you're.
Oh no! I didn't. No. This is my one of my curtains for my bedroom.
Oh,
well,
okay.
wait. What color are your fingernails?
Oh, mine are just natural.
Okay.
Because I'm also Muslim, and the nail polish, like when I do pray 5 times a day, like you're not allowed to have nail polish. So if I do have nail polish, I'm breaking the rules.
Right.
I'm not being a good Muslim.
So if you wear a different color outfit tomorrow, are you going to change the curtains?
No.
Oh, okay.
Crazy.
That'd be a little bit much.
I don't care how many master's degrees you have. I'm not.
Really? You wouldn't do it for someone that had like 2 master's degrees?
Not today.
Like, tell me what the criteria is for you to, if someone was coming over, what would you change the curtains for?
If I got tired of them.
No, but I'm saying like, okay, you're attracted to higher education, but that's not enough for you to customize your bedroom.
Yeah.
Where is it, like how,
Oh,
what are you customizing for?
Okay, I would it only so it would benefit me.
Okay, good. Okay, so you're not going to change for somebody else. Got you.
Like, I would make sure it matches my skin color. Like if we're ever like doing something where it would like my skin color would look great in that lighting with that curtain. You know what I mean? Something
this
like
is what people think about. Huh?
Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I think the important thing is that you said it's about you and not about the other person.
Yeah.
How often do
how does my skin color look in this curtain if the lights are off, or like or in the morning sunlight comes in? Like will it
How often do you change the curtains?
Not that often. Like if I get a new bedding or something like that, I have a couple of curtains. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't pay attention to it. But yeah, once in a while you kind of get bored with them, like at your house, and you change them. And you're like, it's time to go. Come back next year.
I've had the same bedroom curtains for like 15 years now.
Are they green?
They're red.
Oh. Red. I don't think I've ever seen red curtains.
It was just a whim one day. We were like, let's get crazy. Let's buy red curtains. And then I can't get rid of them.
Yeah, red curtains are certainly different.
Good on every skin color.
Must be a Cali thing.
It's not.
She also works for the circus.
That's true. They go well with that. So that's part of it.
Yeah.
Circus?
Yep.
We don't have to talk about this.
No, please.
The real circus?
She can walk on tightrope.
There is no real circus anymore. Have you heard about the entertainment industry and how it's doing right now?
I mean, but what circus did you work for? Is this a joke?
No, I'm a tightrope walker.
Oh, really?
Well,
Oh, that's pretty dope. Did you ever fall?
Yeah. Oh, I've never heard that question before. I have not. I once fell in a show. I was actually doing a show for my friend. I was in Belgium. I was there for a week. I flew back. I drove up to San Francisco to do a show for a friend. She actually is a really cool friend who does this thing called the Uncle Junior Project, and her objective is to she's a circus historian who is specifically documenting the history of African Americans in circus because it's not well documented, but there's a lot of history there. So her project is to document the history of African Americans in circus. So she was doing a fundraiser. I went to her fundraiser. I landed in the United States. I drove up to San Francisco, did her fundraiser, and I was just jet lagged and like not ready. And like, I didn't fall, but I did like kind of stumble, and then I had to catch the cable, and then I like spun around it a little bit. But yeah.
Did you make it look cool at least?
I mean, I tried. I don't think, in my mind, no. Some people were like, yeah, that was cool. And I was like, yep.
So is this like, and I'm sure I'm asking a dumb question, but the dumber question would be the one I don't ask. So
all right, ask one of the 5 dumb questions people ask me when they find out I'm a tightrope walker. I'm ready.
Okay, so is this something that takes like years and years and years of concentration and training?
Yes.
Okay.
No one's asked me that question before, actually. You're the first.
So
usually it's
like,
how high have you gone? Have you ever fallen? How'd you get into that?
well, that was going to be my next question, is what led you to, and like, where do you go to train for something like that?
Having a lot of
So
ball.
here's how I can tell you the story of my life as it progressed. I finished
Well,
my
hold on.
undergrad.
Hold on. Are you a carny?
No, I'm not a carny, but that is a common term. Generally, a carny is somebody who works at carnivals, running rides, running games, things like that. But that's like the derogatory term for circus performers. So if someone
I'm
wants
sorry.
to not,
I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to be offensive at all.
well, you didn't ask me if I was a slackliner, so you're still one step ahead. So no, I'm not a carny. I went to my undergrad. I did dance, and then I went to do a little bit of grad school in Caribbean dance in Jamaica. And while I was there, I met a professor from Temple University who was the director of the African dance program at Temple. She told me about a PhD program at Temple for African dance. So I moved to Philadelphia to apply for the program, spent a year working in Philadelphia. While I was working in that year, there were some circus performers that noticed me in a show I was in. They asked me to join their show, and they trained me and kind of took me on as an apprentice, and that's how it started. And then I ended up not going to Temple because I was like, I don't know, I'm gonna ride this wave, you know? Because their rule was, if you wanted to apply to this master's program, you have to have been working without any enrollment in any university for a full year, so that if you're really going to commit to a PhD in something like dance, you have to have lived and worked as a dancer for at least a year, so you really know what you're getting into. So I was trying to do that, and then I just started working in a lot of different companies, and then started doing circus, and I was like, I don't know, I'm going to do this. This is what I'm doing.
So how long did you tightrope walk for? And
You
would
mean
you
how
still
long?
do it?
I still do it. Yeah, it's still.
Oh, you still? Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have any pickpockets who worked for you?
A grifter? No, none of our companies ever had anybody who did one of those acts. That's a cool act, though. There's a Cirque du Soleil show where there's a guy, he's a clown, but he's like a pickpocket, and he gets an audience volunteer on stage, and while he's on stage, he steals the guy's watch, he steals the guy's wallet, all in front of an audience of thousands of people. It's a cool act. It's very good. But I know that was a joke, but no. Never had a pickpocket. So the circus I currently work for is a social circus. So we exist to serve the community. We do free shows in public parks in low-income neighborhoods, not right now because of quarantine. We do free after-school programs in low-income neighborhoods, and we do free in-school residencies for Title I schools. Title I schools are schools that exist at or below the poverty line, the students. For me, art is a form of classism. I think that the way that art is protected for the upper class is perpetuating classism in a lot of ways. So as a person who cares about the arts and also cares about activism, one of the best ways for me to engage in that activism is to make art accessible to people from all backgrounds.
So what types of performers are in the troupe that you're with?
We have, my AirPods are dying. Hold on, let me take them out. Nobody's talking.
We got,
Hold on.
we got you. We can kind of hear you.
Oh, you can hear me. Okay, cool.
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay, my AirPods died. We have our core group of performers. We have a foot juggler from Ethiopia. She moved to China when she was like in high school, I think, and learned foot juggling, which is a traditional Chinese. She juggles carpets on her feet and then a table and then some jugs. And then we have a really cool acrobat who's so good from Guinea, and he's just like this incredible tumbler. And then we have a juggler, and who do we have? Like contortionist.
Did you say
You know, basic
acrobat is
stuff.
he or she? Acrobat from Guinea.
He's a he.
He. Okay.
He's like,
Yeah,
what?
he's-
A guinea
What's
girl?
the general age of your performers? All ages or?
A little bit on the older side, for more so than other circuses, because our circus is, you can do it in one city.
Mhm.
And most of our performers are also coaches in our program. So they're people that are maybe semi-retired, like the acrobat in our show. He was with a show and got pretty injured and had to kind of take a step back. And I wouldn't say he's retired by any means, but it's a lot easier of a contract. So I would say the average age of our performers is like late 20s to late 30s. That's the kind of the range.
Okay.
And then
But
of
your
course we
acrobat
have
is
the
older
kids.
than that? Your acrobat is older than that?
Oh no, he's in his 20s. Yeah, for sure.
Oh, okay.
He's young.
Okay.
He's probably the youngest guy we have.
Oh, okay. And when you said he had to
but-
take a step back, that was no pun intended?
No pun intended. He was doing a backflip on a three high. So like there's, three people stacked, and he went to do a backflip to landing, kneed himself in the forehead. And you get so much force doing a flip that he had a really bad head injury and had actually cracked the bone. And so he kind of had to come off the road and ended up here with us.
It sucks.
And
and then we have our
troop,
ringmaster. What's that?
I was gonna ask what your troop was called.
Oh, well, they're called Fern Street Circus.
Burn
That's where they
Street.
started. Fern Street.
Burn?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
It's just a street in San Diego. And then our ringmaster is bilingual, which is really a focal point because most of our audience members are either Spanish speaking or bilingual. So all of the shows, when he's speaking, he's hopping back and forth between English and Spanish pretty rapidly, actually. Like, he's real good at it. It's really impressive. So, yeah.
Thank you.
But right now we do only virtual performances, and then the company is doing performances at food distribution events. I'm not participating in those just because I am considered high risk for COVID because I have asthma. So there are a lot of people that are food insecure right now, and there are long food lines. People are going to try to get something to eat, and rather than have them just sit in the food line and wait and feel sorry for themselves, we have our circus performers at those events. So as they're driving their car by, and often they'll have their kids in the car, they get to see a juggler, or they get to see a big puppet, or they get to see an acrobat, something to kind of lighten the mood,
Does that?
That's really
Can they
cool.
see you? Can they see you while they're standing in line as well?
Sometimes, not every event has a walking line. A lot of these events just have drive-up lines.
Driving. Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, and in San Diego, it's a very car-centric. It's Southern California, so it's very car-centric.
Right.
But there are a couple of events that do have walking lines, and we do walk. Well, I say we. I mean, the organization does do like walk by jugglers and things like that. Try to keep them entertained.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. God bless you guys.
So, Nafisa, you're a trapeze artist?
No. Not today, I wish.
So no trapeze in Burn Street Circus?
No, we do have an aerialist. It's been so long since our last show that I'm starting to forget what it was like. I think our last show was probably March, obviously. Everybody's last show was in March. So it's like fading away.
Now comes the stupid question. Do you have a clown?
Of course, we have Clown Otis. He was actually the third African-American clown in Ringling Brothers and Barnum and Bailey.
Really?
Third ever. Mm-hmm.
Me
And
and
he's been with
Ish,
Frontier Circus.
me and Ish had a Clown Otis. Me and Ish have a Clown Otis too.
What does that mean?
No, it's just we have a friend named Otis.
We have a friend
Oh,
named
really?
Otis.
Is he funny?
He's pretty funny.
He's funny. He's funny. He's very talented as well.
Mhm.
Flavius is brilliant and funny. I love it.
Thank you.
Great.
I would agree with that. He's
Yeah.
no Clown Otis, but he's pretty funny.
He is funny, honey.
So you just have one clown?
We have one clown. He's been with us since the mid-90s, but also in most of our big shows, because we do a tour of the neighborhood that we work in, usually in October. And in those shows, the kids that are in our after-school program are also in the show. So even though there's only one adult clown, we have a clown act that has the kids in it. And then we do have a clown coach who is separate from Clown Otis, and she's often in the show with the kids. So she'll create an act with the kids, and then she'll be in their act with them, or like they do a little singing routine together.
It's interesting because I find clowns to be like, they're great. Like whenever I went to the circus, like the clown
So happy
act
that you
is
said
like
that.
great. No, seriously, like I don't mean it to, listen, I always love that routine where like 30 of them get out of the little car, you know what I mean? Like they drive up and it's like, wait a minute. I know there's a trick to it, but it's like, man, how'd they get all those people in that car? I love the clown acts.
Yeah, I'm so often defending clowning to people that I'm really just grateful that I didn't have to do it just now.
Oh, okay. You were being serious. I couldn't tell.
Oh yeah, no, because so many people be like, I find clowns scary, and I'm like, you're scared of aliens that dress up like clowns, like it. That guy's not even a real clown. He's a space alien. Didn't you read the book?
He's like a alien spider or something like that.
Yeah, he's not even a clown. He's using the image of the clown to attract children. He's not actually a clown.
Oh my god, I stayed till midnight. I really have to go, guys. And you guys didn't notice my microphone was off, but like I did fall down off my chair
Oh no.
Oh,
a little while ago. Right before I think you just started speaking, so I reached for my charger and the whole chair tipped over and I tipped over.
You know, Nafisa,
And you guys didn't even notice.
Nafisa, it takes a lot of practice and skill if you're going to try to do that kind of stuff. So
but it just falls out of the Zoom window.
yeah, you might want to consult Erica first before you go falling out of your chair. It's not as easy as it looks.
There's a skill to doing it without hurting yourself. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Tumbling. I think it's called
tumbling.
Well,
tumbling.
that's clowning. That's straight clowning right there, to be able to fall out of a chair and not hurt yourself. Clown Otis is the master of that. If you want to talk about a funny clown, that's a funny clown.
I was glad I was muted. You guys didn't even notice.
Ish, have you ever heard Dwayne or Otis talk about a dude named like Womp or having these stories about a Womp? Does that sound familiar?
It doesn't sound familiar, but I'm sure. I'm
Okay.
sure I have. It just nothing that I can recall.
There was just this.
And I guess-
Okay.
Long
All
time.
right, Nafisa.
Hey, it's been cool, Nafisa.
Oh, it was so nice to meet you, Ish. Have
You
a good
too.
night. Bye.
You too.
There was just this hilarious character. I don't know if D or O would remember him, but it was from the days when I used to smoke like a lot with those guys, and we were probably at the apartment that me and Otis lived at over on Berkshire, I think. And there was this dude who would just like fall out of his chair and say "womp womp," and it was just like the funniest shit I can remember. But it reminded me of the clowning.
You, Otis, and D have a lot of life experience, shared life experiences. I think I'm kind of jealous.
Yeah, I mean that I can remember.
Katie,
It was so
too.
long ago. It's so long ago. It's hard to remember. It's hard to remember all those things. I
lived with Otis at one point. We lived together.
Yeah. You and did you live there with a young woman too? or was that a different time?
Kiki didn't live with us. Otis's wife, girlfriend.
No, it wasn't.
Wife.
It wasn't Kiki. This was a different time, I think. This was Otis lived with another girl. It wasn't Kiki, and it wasn't the girl he was seeing.
No. At least when we lived together, no. No. But yeah, no, Otis and I lived together for a time. We had an apartment together for a time.
Kensington,
yeah,
right?
no.
Kensington?
Huh?
In
No,
Kensington or
no,
Virginia.
in the west, on the Lower West Side, Virginia and West Upper.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, Lower West Side.
Did I ever check that?
I believe you did.
Okay.
No, you did. I know because during that time period, you and Corey were both around quite often. Not necessarily at our house, but especially that one summer. I remember like they had the one weekend was like the Taste of Buffalo. The next weekend was like the Art Voice Street Festival, and like everybody was all together because there was a lot of music and stuff going on. And we ended up going to like your house and doing shrooms, and you know, it was like a big summer that summer.
Yeah,
a real bohemian summer.
Yeah,
a lot of creative energies was flowing during that time period.
I don't remember being at a place where you and Otis lived, unless it's the place that I'm thinking of, and I just didn't realize. Unless the picture I have in my head is the place where you live, but I thought at that point you lived with somebody else, and not Otis. I met you. Maybe that was the place. I didn't think Otis lived with you at that point.
Yeah, because that's when I met you, when I was living with Otis.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And then there was a pretty dope freestyle session in my car between you, Dwayne, and myself, which then led to a nice tripping session at your house.
Okay.
Which that was
how
actually
did you meet Flavy?
So we have a mutual friend named Dwayne, who I've known, I don't know, probably since I was 5, maybe before then. And so when I came back to America, I think I came back in 98, 99, something like that. I came back to America and I was living in the same place where I grew up and where Dwayne grew up, and he was still living there with his mom. So, you know, we'd known each other forever. So we just kind of got right back into being who we were, you know what I mean? The type of friends that we were. And Dwayne at the time was, you know, in the hip hop, he rapped, he was dope, you know, doing music. And he had a crew of people, Otis, Flav, Kelsey, another friend named Corey. And I got to know these guys, not Flav. I got to know these guys through Dwayne. And I ended up moving in with my friend Otis, who I met through Dwayne. We had an apartment together. And it was during that time, it was kind of like I was going to college. It was, you know, that time we were all just kind of, you know, getting together, having freestyle music sessions, smoking, you know, hanging out. You know, most of us were on the Lower West Side with the exception of Dwayne and Kelsey, but we were all kind of like coming together. And in that time period, you know, Dwayne actually introduced me to Mike. I don't know exactly what, I mean, that summer is foggy because it was a lot of weed smoking, a lot of partying. But during that time period, Dwayne introduced me to Mike, and I know it was if it wasn't at my house, Mike, it was at an event that was going on near my house, like the Art Voice Street Festival or Taste of Buffalo. You know what I mean? And from that, you know, that's how I met Mike, through them. They had already had like a close kinship with each other. Like it was this close, tight-knit circle. So either, you know, just by proximity of being in that circle, I was going to meet Mike. I didn't meet him right away, but I was gonna meet him because he was a part of that circle. So yeah,
Okay.
that's how I met Mike. I had to be in my early 20s.
Yeah, I feel like it was at your house because I feel like we were on a mission that day, and it may have been for the mushrooms.
Yeah, we were on a mission. I remember the first night we sat in my car before we decided to go on the mission, right? We were in my car literally freestyling for like an hour and a half. You were in the front, Dwayne was driving, and I was in the back seat. Because if I was ever with a licensed driver, I didn't drive. I always let other people drive my car.
Because of the mushrooms?
No, because I don't prefer to drive. I don't like driving. I mean, I will drive, but I don't particularly care for driving. So if I'm ever with someone else, even if it's my car, if I'm with someone else and they can drive, I usually just let them drive. And I'm usually in the passenger seat or in the back seat. And that just comes from some things that happened in my youth in the military. I found out driving is like a sleeping pill for me. If I have to drive any distance out, it'll put me to sleep. And 2, so I was forced to be my colonel's driver in the military. Like I wouldn't have chose to do that, but they put my name on a Humvee window, and it was the colonel. They put his name on the other window. So I was still required to work. So I'd have to work. And then when the colonel needed to go anywhere, I'd have to get in a Humvee, go pick up the colonel. And the problem, and I'd be driving all over. And the problem was when everybody else got off work, like colonels and, upper level officers are still working. So I still had to work for like 3 hours after everyone else was off. And it just gave me like this, put a bad, I wasn't that kid that could, I started driving when I was 13 years old. And then by the time I was 18, it was like, okay, I've, been there, done that. I'm good.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've never been, still to this day. And I drive now more often than ever, but still to this day, I prefer, if I don't have to drive, not to drive. It's not my thing. I'm not I could take it or leave it.
Gotcha.
That's just how I am with that. I'm not a drive, this big, I don't know. You see, it's interesting because I'm talking to people on 2 different coasts. Like I talk to people from New York City who, are in their 30s and are just getting their learner's permit, which is like weird to me. You know what I mean? Like, for me, it's like, what do you mean? Most people in Buffalo have their license before they're 18. So what are your thoughts on it? You drive?
You can get around Buffalo without a car, but you can't get around Southern California without a car. It's not possible.
So you do drive?
I do drive, but it was hard. When we first moved to San Diego, we were in San Francisco before this, and I didn't have a car in San Francisco. I didn't need a car. And then we moved here, and for the first year we lived here, I didn't have a car then either. And it was hard to be in a city like this without a car. So yeah, I drive now for sure. I got my car in like 2016 after several years of not having a car. So I kind of go on and off with it depending on where I live. When I lived in Philly, I didn't have a car. And I lived there for a good number of years. When I lived in Buffalo, for some of that time, I didn't have a car. Because I feel
Do
like
you prefer
walk.
to drive or be a passenger?
No, I'd rather. No, I think I'd rather be a passenger. But if I can choose between driving somewhere and walking or taking public transportation, I'd always choose walking or public transportation.
Well, I don't necessarily choose public transportation, but I'm often leaving my car parked in the driveway and walking to places I can walk to.
Yeah,
like I do it all, I do it all the time. Like if it's, if I'm going, in the Riverside from Kenmore, I'll just walk. Especially if I know I'm going to hang out, I'll just walk.
Yeah. Well, for me, it's like I have I often will have to transport large pieces of circus equipment, so I can't take that on a bus.
Mm.
So I need to have a car.
How is public transportation in San Diego?
It's not good. It's not good at all. Barely there. There are people who live in poverty who get around public transportation, but they are spending hours on the bus to get a very short distance. Like, it's, of all the cities I've lived in, this is definitely the worst city for public transit by far. And Buffalo's public transit's not that good.
Buffalo's public transportation sucks.
It's better than this city. There's a train that goes from the border, like you can get off the train and go to the border checkpoint. And it goes like through the city. So it's like straight from the border through the city of San Diego. It barely goes anywhere. It's like Buffalo's subway system, just a little bit longer than that.
Just goes straight down Main Street. I didn't understand it when I lived in Germany and I came back here. I'm like, yo, this is the worst public transportation I've ever seen in my life. And it took me living in Germany, in Frankfurt, to realize how bad and like archaic Buffalo's public transportation is. Like, we have a train and it only goes down the main street of Buffalo. Like, with a subway station, you should be able to go to all the major suburbs. You know what I mean? Like, there's no way you shouldn't be able to get on a subway train and go to the Galleria Mall.
Yeah, it's true. It's interesting because, in Philadelphia, they have really good public transit, in my opinion. I think it's really good. A lot of people who don't take it don't know about it. So I would get a job teaching dance at like some YMCA out in the suburbs, and I'd be like, can I get there via public transportation? And they'd be like, no, there's no way to get there. And then I would find out just by a little bit of Googling that I could just take the bus or take a train there. But yeah, Buffalo's not good.
No, it's not. Especially when but I was spoiled in Frankfurt, right? Like, in Frankfurt, the way Europe is set up, at least parliament countries, right? You can walk out your door and go, you can be in Germany and walk out your door and go to France.
Mm-hmm.
Like,
I've done that.
my airplane ticket, if I bought an airplane ticket, it got me from my house in Germany to my house in America, and the return trip ticket got me back to my house, meaning I could use it to get on a bus. I could use it to get on any transportation that got me to my original destination, which was just, that's just how it's set in. Literally, when I tell you I could walk out of my door in Bornheim, I lived in, actually, this is when I was in Eschborn. So when I lived in Eschborn, it was a part of Frankfurt, right? I could literally walk out my house, walk across the street, and get on the train that runs down the middle of the street, take it to the underground train, take that train either to the airport or to the main train station, and get on another train that is going to take me to France.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if I'm cheating, I don't pay if I'm cheating, and I just ride until the person who comes and checks your tickets get on and I get off. You see what I'm saying? Or I just buy the ticket to France. You know what I'm saying? You can just buy it. You know what I mean? Obviously, you got to pay for it, but it's not as expensive as you would think. But yeah, you could get anywhere, any parliament country on their transportation system without having to have a car or getting on an airplane. So yeah, it's crazy. They have a bus route, an above ground train that goes down every major street, and then the subway system.
Well, yeah, I mean, I have a lot of friends in Europe that don't have cars because they don't need them.
But I hear New York City has good public transportation, though.
All right, folks, I'm about to be out.
Oh yeah, it is 1:17.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, good round of discussions.
Yeah, always a pleasure. Erica, don't be strange.
All right.
She can't help that, but it is what it is.
That's my way of saying don't be a stranger on the Zoom.
I got you.
All right, y'all have a good night.
Okay, have a good one.
See ya.